Okay, well, let's try. Check, 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 check. 1, 2. Check, check. 1, 2. All right, well, here we go. Okay, let's try this again. Woohoo! Technical problems. Okay, we're good now. Thanks, guys. And that's why I do a check, because I just went and spoke for 4 minutes about all the awesome stuff we're going to do tonight, and nobody saw it, nobody heard it. So, see, I get out of practice, guys. Like we're, I'm still figuring this out. So, all right. Well, I'm just going to start everything over again of what I got going on here. So, tonight's topic. Well, first of all, welcome back. If you aren't subscribed, you're not going to be able to participate in the chat. So make sure you subscribe on the YouTube channel here. And also, I was mentioning, if you are not already subscribed to my newsletter, go to my website. I believe there's a link in the description of this video. It's more than just a newsletter. We're building a community. There's a Discord group. There's all sorts of free stuff that I give away. I'm going to be doing some exclusive content. I've already given away some like fractal presets and some Pro Tools, Pro Tools template, checklists, you know, all the fun, cool stuff. So please be sure to go to the website and also sign up. And so topic tonight, drum programming. This is asking somebody what's the proper way to program drums, or what's the best way to program drums, or what's the best drum plugin. It's kind of like asking, like, what's the meaning of life? Like, you ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different answers. So I want to preface today's topic with, this is what I do. If you have a better way, by all means, knock yourself out. More importantly than that, share with the community. Get on the Discord group. Let us know how you do it. Put it in the chat. Let's get the conversation started. I'm just showing you how I do it because I get asked all the time. And because I enjoy programming drums. I love recording drums. Is actually one of my favorite things. I often say in another life I was a drummer. I'm not a drummer, but I really love drum sounds. I love like helping when I'm producing stuff. I love helping write drum parts. Like, I love it all. So this is a really fun topic for me. And yeah, we're gonna have lots of fun tonight. So it's going to be probably go pretty in depth, so try to follow along with me. If you're kind of new to like the drum programs and drum programming in general, bear with me, because I'm probably not going to get into too much of the kind of the basic 101 stuff. But you know, you can always go back and watch it, and maybe go read some manuals, check out some other videos from other people who are doing a little bit more of the kind of the basic kind of Pro Tools stuff, whatever. Also, got some awesome stuff to give away tonight. As you guys probably all know, I have an awesome relationship with the guys at Drum Forge. We've collaborated on a couple great products. The drum shots that me and Andrew Cruz did a while back. I'm going to be using a bunch of those tonight. Shocker. And then also Drum Soap and Arcus, which is another sample pack and plugin that that we did with the Drum Forge guys. So I'm going to give away a copy of that tonight. Drum Forge, so I use Superior Drummer for a lot of stuff. Savior is Drum Forge's kind of version of that type of thing, and I use all sorts of stuff. So this isn't brand. We're pretty brand agnostic over here. But I love the Drum Forge guys. They make really amazing stuff, and they were nice enough to give away some stuff. So we're also going to give away Clarify, and Clarify is one of my favorite plugins when I'm mixing drums. So we've got all sorts of stuff to give away tonight. In order to qualify, we're going to be picking people at random. You got to subscribe to the channel, because I want you to give me a thumbs up or a wave. I see a bunch of people doing it already. Awesome. Screenshot of us watching this thing, go share it on Instagram, hashtag Chris Baseford, or even better yet, share the link, the YouTube link, and that way people can, on Instagram, copy the link, go to Instagram, share it, and that way people can tune in and watch with us. You got to be watching live to win. So we are going to give away right now the first one. What should we give away? The first person that tells me what we should give away. We'll decide what we give away, not win, but what we should give away. Do we want to give away the Arcus and drum soap first? Do we want to give drum shots, Savior, Clarify? Somebody pipe up. Drum shots. Okay, cool. Drum shots is going to be the first thing given away tonight. So I'm going to give you guys from now until I'm kind of done my intro here, maybe in like 5 minutes, to make sure you're waving down here, participating in the chat, subscribing. Hashtag Chris Baseford over on Instagram. Let's share a screenshot or a link. Let's help build the community, because I love doing this. I want to do more, and as long as people are watching and getting something out of it, I'll keep doing it. All right? Okay, so I see a few familiar faces in the chat already. Good evening, everybody, and good morning if you're on the other side of the world. So this is going to be awesome. All right, so drum programming. Some of you who have already signed up for my newsletter have received the session that I'm actually going to be working off of right now. Okay, here's my session, and now I have brought in I don't want to call it instrumental. It's no drums, no vocals, but I've brought in kind of an instrumental minus drums that I can program along to. This is a song that I produced a while back, and it's a cool song to do drums to because we ended up making the drums big and awesome on this one, so figured I'd use it. There are so many different programs that we can use, and so if you guys got the template that I sent out, and if you didn't, go to my website, sign up for the newsletter. I'll send it out again next week. And if you are signed up for the community, you can go and download all the stuff that I've given away. If you haven't gotten it yet, you can go to the site and grab it. So I wish you could give away Pro Tools. Well, maybe they'll give me a couple licenses I can give away at some point. But yeah. So there are so many different programs that you can use. The template that I sent out had a variety of stuff, all right? I'm actually going to turn off the comments here because I don't really need them. This is Superior Drummer from TuneTrack. I use Superior Drummer all the time. That was in my template. Do you need to use Superior Drummer? No. This is another program that I use all the time, loading up here. This is DrumForge Savior. We're going to be giving this away tonight. It's a very similar thing to Superior Drummer. It's got great sounds. It's got multi-mics, so you've got your overheads and your rooms and all your awesome stuff. You've got tons of different drums you can choose from. Swap out the kick drums, the snare drums, all that awesome stuff. Okay, I'm literally scrolling through about 5 different programs that you can use. You don't have to use what I use. Feel free to swap stuff out. Okay, now we're in Contact. This is the GGD Modern and Massive kit. This is one that a lot of my clients that I work with use. And so a lot of the sessions that I get from people, whether they be mixes, they have a lot of these sounds printed, or whether or not I'm collaborating with an artist or a producer on a production, they're sending me sessions. A lot of the time it has something like this as well. If you don't have Superior Drummer, it doesn't matter. If you don't have GGD Modern and Massive, it doesn't matter. There's so many different options, okay? Here's Steven Slate drums, SSD 5. You can use this if you want. The goal is, and here's if you did download the template, in the notes section, I kind of put a little bit of note, is like, I have so many different tracks running, as you can see. They all have a purpose, and we're going to talk about what that purpose is tonight. But again, if you don't have Superior Drummer, doesn't matter. Swap it out for whatever you do have. Addictive drums, even batteries. A lot of the battery kits it's not as flexible because a lot of it doesn't have like the multi-outs, or it doesn't have the leakage options and that type of stuff. But some of these other ones don't as well. So again, I sound like a broken record because I know I'm going to start seeing in the comments here in 2 seconds, like, oh man, I don't have Superior Drummer. I can't follow along, or your template doesn't matter to me because I don't have that. Well, just swap it out. And so I use, if you'll see here in the comment, I put insert main drum programming plugin, the most realistic. So how I do this is I have levels of different tracks, okay? Let me go to the main screen, show you what I've got here. In the comments, insert main drum programming plugin, the most realistic, okay? So for me, The one that I like to use to like replicate, quote unquote, a drummer is Superior Drummer. It just has the most flexibility in regards to routing mics and getting it, adjusting the leakage and being able to bus out the mics to tracks and really be able to have control over it after the fact. If you want to use Addictive Drums, you can. If you want to use Superior or Easy Drummer, you can. If you want to use the Drumforge Savior or one of their other packs, you can. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. Okay. Somebody's chirping about the goofiest screenshot. I bet I make some weird faces. So speaking of which, let's give away drum shots. Chris Baseford, Andrew Cruz edition. And I've got my buddy John in the chat here. He's kind of my moderator for tonight. Everybody say hi to John for me. John Plett, where are you, buddy? Give us a wave. Because he's been scouring Instagram, watching for all of your hashtags. And we are going to give away drum shots. Chris Baseford, Andrew Cruz edition. If you want like cartoon sounds, well, this is the drum shots pack. This is just over the top ridiculous awesomeness. So, okay. So, John is going to pick a winner. I'm going to keep going. John's randomly picking a winner. And then when he announces it here in the chat, I need you guys need to go to info@chrisbaseford.com and send me your email address. Just say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I won the drum shots. If you send me an email and you're not the guy that John said won, I'm going to be pissed. So don't do it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to test some audio here. Make sure that we've got the track coming in loud and clear. Give me a thumbs up. Hopefully that's coming in. Okay, good. All right, so here we go. So how I think about programming drums, I kind of think about it in stages, right? So when we're talking about drums in general, if we're tracking drums, what are the kind of the different elements that we have to kind of consider, and ultimately, how can we break this down into steps to make it like just tolerable and palatable? So we've got a couple different things. Obviously, we've got the sounds of the drums, right? Which I don't want to say are irrelevant right out of the gate, but it's like we can tweak the sound later. Ultimately, we've got the part, and when I say the part, like kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. What's the drum pattern, right? And then we have all of the elements of the actual performance of the drum. So we've got velocities, we've got what mics are we using in terms of like the round robins and the velocity layers. That will be different based off of the program that you're using. So we are going to dig in. I'm just going to start kind of going through my process, and I will stop maybe like every 10 or 15 minutes and just answer some questions. So, John, do we have a winner, buddy? Are you in there? Let's see what we got. All right, he'll pick somebody. Okay, so the first thing that I like to focus on, like I said, I've got a kit here. You know what? Maybe I'll actually show you guys something here. Let me back up a second while John's picking a winner. Okay. Looks like John's picked a winner. Danny. Okay, buddy. Send us an email. Okay. Congratulations. Drum shots. Chris Baseford. Andrew Cruz. Woo! Cheer, crowd. Yay! Awesome. Okay, the next one I'm going to give away is let's give away Soap and Arcus next. So that comes in a bundle. So you guys have in between now until the end of the first Q&A to like I said, give us some waves to make sure you're in the chat here. You're watching live, screenshot, hashtag, share the link, all the fun stuff. Okay. I'll give away Drum Soap and Arcus bundle probably in about 30 minutes or so. Okay. All right, let's do this. So if you're wondering why the heck I've got all of these tracks here, here's what I like to do. I'm going to show you kind of a complicated setup, and then we're going to dumb it back down, just so that way you're not wondering what's going on and you're not trying to see what's happening here. So, and again, if you did download the template, you'll see what this is. So I've got a bunch of different stuff triggering simultaneously, okay? So I've got my main kit, which is kind of the most realistic kit, and what I'll do is I'll go through here and kind of show you what they are. And this is on an instrument track. So if you're not on Pro Tools, I apologize. I don't know the other workstations very well, all right? So what we need to do is probably got to head over to the Discord group and see if somebody can help you if you've got any questions that are specific to your workstation, okay? But what I do is I do one instrument track, okay? Instrument track is basically a MIDI track, but it also lets you load a plugin to get sounds. So it's like an instrument track and an auxiliary return mixed in together. And so you've got your instrument inputs and outputs. So that's your output. You've got your input. This is basically your MIDI in and out. So right now, if I go into record on eDrums 1, which is kind of my main drum programming, that is Superior Drummer, and that's going to be, and you can see this MIDI track is triggering a bunch of different stuff, but it's triggering Superior Drummer, as you can see right here, okay? That's mainly the important thing. So okay, so there's my finger drumming for you. Okay, so what you're hearing is Superior Drummer, right? You can see. And again, if you don't have this kit, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Just pick something. Pick something that sounds good to you. Pick something that gives you the options in the with all the overheads and the rooms and all that stuff that you want. Like pick what you like. Don't just follow what I like. We will get into tweaking sounds, but that's not what we're doing right now, okay? So in addition to triggering Superior Drummer, which is kind of like my realistic drums, I also trigger at the same time by holding Control and selecting the MIDI out on my instrument track. I can assign multiple outputs. So I'm triggering Superior Drummer, and when you hold Control before you click on this, you can also then send this MIDI to Savior. You can send this MIDI to Contact. You can send this MIDI to SSD. You can send this to battery, all this fun stuff, okay? And so when I press a key on this instrument track, I'm going to mute Superior Drummer, okay? That's Superior Drummer. That's Savior. I think that's Modern and Massive. That's Stephen Slate. That's Battery. That's Battery triggering one of the Chris Baseford drum shot samples, right? And then that's Stephen Slate triggering a drum soap kick. So from this one MIDI track, I'm triggering all of these programs at the same time. So now what I can do really quickly, I'm just going to program something here. Right? Okay. So now I've got one MIDI track basically triggering all of these different programs, and I've got just like I can mix and match to my heart's content, okay? But for now, we're going to just work on getting the part in there. So that's kind of what we're focusing on right now. I just didn't want everybody to be sitting here for the next 20 minutes being like, what are all these tracks here for? There is only one MIDI track, but having all of these other instruments set up, ready to go on auxiliary returns, they don't need to be on their own MIDI track. If you want them to be, that's fine. The reason I don't put them on their own MIDI track, there's a couple different reasons. Number one, because I see people do this all the time. They'll have a separate instrument track for every one of these. The problem with that I have found, and this is real world experience, like you start working off of that and then you realize they edited the MIDI on one and didn't copy it over to the rest. And so you're trusting that whoever is programming this, if they're triggering 5 different drum kits, that if they made any changes at all, that they actually dragged the MIDI down into the proper spots. So yes, absolutely, it eats up a lot of CPU having that instruments open. So if your computer can't take it, shut it down. Just pick a few, right? You can turn all of, here, we'll just turn all of these off for now. Make them all inactive. It doesn't matter, right? Again, this is the way I do it. You have to take this, don't just copy me. You have to take this workflow, pick what works for you and what doesn't work for you. If you have different plugins, swap them out. If you don't have a powerful enough system to run it all at the same time, fine. To be honest with you, there's a reason why I just brought in a 2-track stereo file with no drums instead of programming drums in my in the big multi-track session with all the guitars and the bass and all that stuff separated. One of the reasons why I'm not doing this in a big multi-track session is so that way I'm saving CPU more for the drum programs. You might not need how many tracks do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4 main kits, an extra kick, an extra snare, an extra set of toms, extra set of cymbals, and then 6 tracks for the ambient stuff. If in your workflow, if you're like, I don't like that big, massive, like crazy, overblown like sound that Baseford does, like that guy doesn't know what he's doing. Pick 2 kits, pick 1 kit. If you can get this all done in 1 kit, go for it. I like having 1 kit be realistic. I like 1 kit having. Sorry, I think we disconnected there for a second. We have a awesome recorded drum kit with all of the mics, okay? And there's going to be leakage. It's going to be real, right? It's not going to be, you're not going to be able to solo the snare drum and there's no hi-hat in there. It's like I want 1 kit like that. Well, then I also want a couple samples that I have isolated. And those can be more realistic sounding samples, like just not like super processed, right? Then I'm going to want like the super processed stuff. And then I'm going to want the ambient samples. I want all of this stuff when I'm mixing so I can basically have control. And if I want it realistic, I can turn off all the crazy hypey stuff. If I want it hyped, I can mix that in and even sometimes mute the realistic stuff. And I can go back and forth. I have all my options. So when I'm programming drums, I'm kind of driving the ship here. I can basically create the ideal scenario from the get-go, which is why I set it up this way. If it doesn't work for you, figure out a way to make it work for you. And if all this does is give you some ideas as to different ways to do it, awesome. There you go. Okay. So, any questions about the kind of just like the setup and the routing stuff so far? Let me have a quick look at the chat here before we get too far down the road, because I know what's going to happen with always happens with me. I'm going to get way down the road and then kind of circle back. So let's just have a quick look at the chat here. Tom says, give me ideas and haven't seen the plan yet. Good. That's the idea. Bleed settings. You'll see the bleed settings when we get into it. Right now, it's irrelevant. Like you can turn off. One of the things that I actually do with Superior Drummer is turn off all the bleed while I'm programming. So that way it's, again, less CPU intensive. And then when you're going to go print, then you turn on all the bleed and kind of do all your adjustments when all your parts are done. So I already have my routing figured out. Good. How do you make sure MIDI have received matches the MIDI map on the programs you use? Okay, so we will talk about that once we start opening up some of the other plugins. Right now, I'm just programming in Superior Drummer. That's just to get the part in. But yes, MIDI maps. It's a little bit of a situation on some plugins. Certain programs have a better assortment of MIDI maps than others. But yeah, that's a thing. You have to go in and adjust the MIDI map, or you can custom map it. Or if you really get stuck, that's when you basically take one of these auxiliary tracks and you basically turn it into, or you make an instrument track, you drag the MIDI down, make sure it's the same, and then you just kind of manually map it. So that's a way to do it as well. Somebody asked about the template. Yeah, you can get the template, but you got to go to my website, or I think the link's in the description here to sign up for the newsletter. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to get it right away, but maybe what we'll do is we'll send out a newsletter tonight after the live stream. So do we quantize after this? Yes. We're going to get to that. I love the enthusiasm. Yeah, I quantize, but we're going to talk about that because, you know, it's kind of like when you're recording a live drummer, do you edit them to the grid? Do you let them just kind of do the, you know, just keep their feel? Do you time just the shells, but leave the cymbals kind of loose? There's all of these things that we're going to talk about when it comes to like programming and making it realistic. Like, what are you trying to do? And tonight's episode is a little bit about how do we kind of make it realistic. So we're gonna go from that. Little hi-hat, little bit after kick or snare. That's key for me. Awesome, I love it. Yeah, definitely. Like, if you guys got ideas, obviously share them here. Like I said, I would love for you guys to go over to the Discord group. I think if you sign up for the newsletter, the Discord link's in there, and like we could talk about this literally for the next year. I love it. So. Okay, if there's any more questions, I think we're good. Let's dig in. Okay. Just make sure you program enough 2 or 3 crashes and a snare hit at the same time. Yeah, all of them. All hits at the same time is what we're going to do tonight. So, okay. So, all right, let's dig in. So the first thing, like I said, we've got so many different places to start, and I'm a little, if you guys have watched any of my other live streams or listened to me rant about anything on any podcast or interview or anything like that, you guys probably know I'm pretty like systematic. I like to do things in an order. I like to do things with a lot of intention, with a lot of purpose. I like optimizing workflows. I don't like having to go back and do things 2 or 3 times. I like to do them in order that makes sense and is efficient, right? So the thing for me is when it comes to drum programs, all of these drum programs use different velocities. They use different ways of like round robins or the different velocity layers. So if you start going in and if we just go program apart, right? You hear what the dynamic is on this hi-hat? If I play that exact same MIDI on another program, the velocities could be all over the place. So let's not worry about that right now. Let's just get the part programmed, and we'll worry about doing all those little micro adjustments after the fact. Like, I literally don't care. Like, we could draw this in, and I'm actually going to show you guys a couple different ways of doing this. So how I do it, how I typically start is, let's say, okay, we got our song here. I'm going to play it down, and I'm just going to kind of figure out what I'm going to play, okay? So bear with me here. Okay, here we go. Unmute. Turn on a click. Okay, so I'll figure something out here, okay? Okay, so I'm going to record that in. I was just kind of figuring out what I was going to play, because I don't want to play exactly what actually what this part was. I want it to be a little bit different. Okay, so I'm going to record this in. So I'm just going to, like, my timing sucks. I'm playing on this tiny little, like, micro keyboard. Whatever you got. If you got a big keyboard, if you got pads, if you've got nothing, some people use, like, the keyboard, like the QWERTY keyboard. I've never figured that part out yet. But a lot of the time I'll draw it in. Like, we're gonna go through all this. All right, let's program this in here. Okay, drummers, plug your ears. fine. Good enough. All right. Okay, so here we go. Here's our MIDI. Look at all that awesome 127 velocity. So amazingly realistic, right? So somebody asked, do I just play hi-hat, kick, and snare? Yeah, for mainly. I mean, like it kind of depends on the part, right? So I didn't try to play crashes at the same time. I didn't try to play tom fills. I played a couple. I kind of put in a couple spots where they're almost I'd say like fill placeholders. So sometimes I'll just do like a little like hiccup on the snare or something like that, or I'll just do gatu or whatever, or blatu, whatever, something simple. And it's just a placeholder because I know I'm going to put a fill there, right? So anyways, okay, let's walk through this process. So in Pro Tools, option 0 on like kind of like the main keyboard, not the keypad, opens up your event operations window. Option 3 on the keyboard opens up. I just realized that. All right, cool. Got multiple options. All right, so the first thing that I like to do, and you can, I don't know if we're going to dig in too much to MIDI real-time properties tonight, but there's something called MIDI real-time properties, which basically, as you're playing, it's already applying some of these kind of MIDI event options. I sometimes like using that for like quantizing because it will already be basically quantized. So when I just played it there, well, obviously it wasn't this isn't quantized yet. Or what I'm about to show you here. I love Cubase. I love their drum tracks, and I wish MIDI or Pro Tools would make a MIDI track that's like specifically drums, because I hate these don't need to be multiple lengths, right? So the first thing that I like to do is select everything, and I'll set all the durations, and I'll just put in something, some sort of low, small note value. So I usually do like 120, right? Okay, so you can see I like to rush a little bit. Well, who doesn't? All right, I'm gonna have to adjust my grid here a little bit because, as you see, I've got 16th notes here, and I'm in a quarter note grid. So let's go to 16th notes, and now, instead of looking at big, massive notes that don't really matter, it's very quick and easy to see. So this is something MIDI real-time properties is good for. You can set that to turn it on at 120. That you do in the tracks. So you can basically pick MIDI real-time properties here, and you can set your duration to 120, right? And you don't have to write that to track, but it'll just every time now when you play something in, it'll basically set all the durations to 120. Okay. Okay. So the next thing I will do. Somebody asked about quantizing. So the next thing I will do is I will absolutely just quantize this. Okay. Boom. Okay. And let's just play down. Let's go through, and I'm going to do a round. I hit a couple flubs there with wrong keys. So we're just going to listen down to this really quickly and do any little editing that we need to do just to kind of clean up the part, okay? So, guess I'm going to get rid of that kick. That snare shouldn't be there. Double kick. So quantize took me to a weird spot there. Oops. All right. Okay. All right, cool. All right, so now it's kind of we got a little bit of a part here, okay? As you can see, let me scroll over here. Sorry, my window's a little bit of a different size than yours is. As you can see, basically like every hit except for 5 are just like full scale full scale MIDI. When you're using these tiny little keyboards, that kind of happens a lot. So just got to, that's part of what we're doing is going to be going and fixing that after the fact, okay? But right now we're worried about our part. Okay, so we're getting a lot of questions right out of the gate about like cymbals and what are you doing for all that stuff? Okay, so that's going to be the next part. So what I'll do is I'll go through, and you can do this with the mouse, you can do this with the keyboard, you can do it, you can like however you want to do it. Like, but what I like to do is anytime when I'm playing the kick, snare, and hat, I'm always, if there's a cymbal, and I know I've got a buddy who's an awesome like keyboard drum player guy. Any time that I know I want the virtual sticks to be hitting something, I will put a hat in there, I'll put a snare in there or whatever, just so that there's a note, because I like to then go and drag this to, so, and when you do it this way, that kind of protects against the 8-limbed drummer, right? So if instead of going and overdubbing the crash cymbals, I'm simply moving hits that I was able to play as a real drummer would. And obviously there's some scenarios where a drummer can actually hit, like a crash and a hi-hat at the same time. But at that point, it's a very, very intentional a process. You're not accidentally leaving a hat in when there's a crash and a snare hitting at the same time as well, okay? So I like to drag the hi-hat to the crash as opposed to overdubbing the crash, right? So I'm going to go through and just do that exact thing. Just go and move a couple of these crash cymbal or these hi-hats to crash cymbals, okay? Okay, so I'm going to put a crash there, and then I'm going to move there. So, oops, sorry. So we're gonna do some sort of fill here. So I'm not gonna worry about this for now, but definitely want to crash here, going into the tag of the song, right? And that, let's do a double crash. So holding Option and just clicking and dragging will copy that. Probably want that one on a crash. Let's go there. Okay, so let's take that to a crash. So let's do that one too. Oh. All right. Okay, so the one thing that I'm also hearing right now is I want, when it goes to this kind of next kind of B section of the chorus where it kind of changes up a little bit, I'm going to change that. I'm going to go off the hat onto something else. So then back to the hat. Okay, so we can do one of two things here. And this is where we're going to get into, like, we're at least going to start paying attention to a little bit of like the velocity stuff, right? If I just move this, say, let's find my ride. There. Yeah, the ride's a little quiet here. Let's go to the bell. That's not working. Let's change that to something else. Let's just do that symbol there. And then because that's supposed to be an accent, not just continue playing, let's move that down to the other crash right there. Okay, so now let's listen to what we got here. Okay. So there, we got a part. Does this sound like real and done and all that stuff? No, but it's a very basic part, and that's kind of like step one, right? So we're not completely done this part. We know we need a drum fill. One thing I did want to mention, because I kind of glazed over it really quickly. So one of the things, again, I'm not a drummer, but I've worked with enough drummers, and ultimately, if most of the people here are probably at least familiar with, how drummers play. Obviously, you've got two hands and 2 feet for the most part. Some drummers, one hand and 1 foot, maybe. I don't know. But you got to just kind of imagine which drums somebody would be playing based off of the part before it. So, for instance, it's interesting to me, and again, these are all like little subtle things, but these are the things that can all lead up to making it feel and sound realistic. Okay, so follow this with me here for a second. A drummer's playing a fast beat, and he goes do 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 crash, right? Is a drummer gonna go do 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 crash? No. He's gonna go do 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 and hit the crash that's right by the low tom, right? That's probably the crash he's gonna hit if he's done doing this big 16th note fill, and he's over here. That's where he's gonna hit the crash. So don't then put the crash on the other side of the drum kit. Pick the crashes accordingly, right? So for instance, like with the crashes here. So he's over here. Right? So he crashed on the same side that he's going to be going to the hat. So just be aware of that. Like be aware of, like, don't just pick the cymbal, be like, oh, I need a crash cymbal. Pick the crash cymbal based off of where the drummer might be. Same thing with, like, there was that one spot right over here where so he's going bum ba ga bum 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 ga da, or would it be here da da ga, right? The drummer's probably not going to go da da. He's going to go da da, right? That's how your body's just going to naturally do it. So pick the cymbals and the different pieces of the kit that you're going to be hitting based off of, like, what would a drummer actually be doing? And that simple thought process can actually be very informative as to, like, which cymbal should I hit here? Which cymbal should I put in? And a lot of people don't actually even think about that. So it's important. If you want to, again, we're talking about making things real. If you don't care, if you just want it to sound like a drum machine or just kind of like canned drums, that's cool. Just don't worry about this. But we're going to be getting into some really subtle details, and that's one of them, right? So, okay, I'm going to jump to the chat really quickly. John, we're going to give away, what are we giving away? Drum soap and Arcus. So Drum Soap, for those of you who don't know, Drum Forge and myself and Andrew Cruz, we collaborated again. Drum Soap is sounds of ambient places, and it's like super massive, big ambient sounds. And then Arcus is the envelope shaper plugin that basically lets you shape the decay in a really cool musical way. And so yeah, it's a really, in my opinion, is a pretty awesome tool. And John's already got a winner. Pablo, is he in the house? Yes, sir. Cool. Okay, buddy, send us an email, info@chrisbaseford.com. We'll get Drumforge. We'll get that sent out to you. We're going to give away, what are we going to give away? I think we should give away Clarify next. Okay, so between now and the next time I stop and take a break with the Q&A, we're going to do like all the other ones. Share, hashtag Chris Baseford on Instagram. Share the link, a screenshot, whatever you like to do. It's up to you. Just want to help spread the word and make sure everybody's here and participating and having fun. So, okay, I'm gonna head up in the chat for a second. Somebody said, how do you make, oh, that was the MIDI maps. Yep. Do you quantize after? Yeah, we already did that. Velocity discrepancies from program to program are the toughest for me. Can't wait to see your process for addressing that. Yep. It is. And this is one of the reasons why you're not going to see, a lot of the time, you're not going to see me, like doing 4 kits with all of the parts of those kits being done at the same time. For instance, I'm not having 2 kits doing everything at the same time. Like I'm having one main kit. I might have a kit doing cymbals, but maybe it's not doing the hi-hats because that's just, it's probably not going to line up. Even if you're using like Superior Drummer, the different libraries sometimes don't even line up. So that's why you kind of have to pick your main kit, and then everything else supplements that. Everything else is feeding into that for some purpose that main kit's not giving you, okay? Okay, where are we going here? Sorry, I'm getting my my spot. Somebody mentioned here, I'm such a control freak. I can't live if I don't program everything to the grid. Well, I'm going to show you some tricks that will make it sound like it's on the grid, but it gives you a little bit more realism that will maybe help you. So even if you like perfectly in time drums, there's a few things you can do to make them just sound better. They're still going to be in time. It's just these little micro adjustments that always help. So that's a fat beat. I only draw on my drum, so this is a new concept to me. Well, we're going to do some drawing in it as well, because we can absolutely do that. I draw in a lot of fills, or what I'll do is I'll just use like one note. So if I want a tom fill to go dugga 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 dugga, right? Probably some kick in there as well, but I would go, and then I would move all those notes to the proper hits, right? Because if I tried to do that on it, you're just like, you're all over the place. So just do it on one thing and then go from there. So, MIDI note length is a game changer. I know, like, come on, Pro Tools, get with it. Like, have the drum tracks. Anybody who uses Cubase knows they've got a type of MIDI track called a drum track, right? And instead of there being long notes, they're diamonds, and the color of the diamond depends on the velocity. I mean, it's awesome. They should just, I can't believe Avid hasn't put that in yet. So, getting MIDI files sent to you with drums all long and funky. That's probably why I kind of started doing it. Do you know where each cymbal kit piece is according to the keyboard in the editor, or do you know it by heart, or do you use your eyes and ears? All of the above. That's the other awesome thing about the Cubase drum track. And I haven't used Cubase in probably like 25 years, but they had this 25 years ago, and I remember it being awesome. So you can actually, number one, you can rearrange the order in which the tracks are, so it doesn't have to be just based off the keyboard. And then you can also name them. So you can have kick drum, snare drum, whatever. So easy. If anybody can figure out a way in Pro Tools to allow that process, like there's got to be some MIDI mapping stuff you can do to where you can have, just scroll to the top, just go all the way to the top of the MIDI editor, and like that's your kick, and that's your snare, and that's your hi-hat, and that's your next hi-hat. Like there's got to be a way to do it, but whatever. I digress. Okay, going back to the chat here for a second. Yeah, we'll get into kind of the where. How do I know where stuff is? The short answer is most programs, kick and snare, are in and hi-hats, or at least like the main hi-hat, closed, open, and pedal are kind of in the same spot. Usually crash cymbals are kind of in the same spot. The libraries that completely, they're like, screw it, we're just going to make our own because we know better. And honestly, like their mapping is quote unquote better. But the problem is it's so not what we're used to that it kind of throws us for a loop. But I have an idea of where things are at, just based off of experience in the various libraries. And again, that's why I do recommend pick one or two main programming, like main plugins for your programming. So that way you know where the parts are. Like if I switched to one of the GGD kits, I'd have no idea where anything is. So just use something that you know. And then the other thing is, you can basically, if you're using it, if you've got this little little speaker icon set up here, when you click on a note, it will play the sound that assigns to that note. So you can actually just drag it until you find the one you're looking for. The other option, most of the programs have a MIDI map that you can look at. So in Superior, it's right here. Okay, so I can go here and look. Let me slide this over for you a little bit more. I can go and look to see kind of what's what. So you can actually click on it to hear it. So the one that, like, with Superior, that I have to open this window when I'm getting into like hi-hat articulations. Like, for instance, if there's more than one open hi-hat. There's open 1, there's open 2, there's open 3, right? There's open 4, there's open 5. So I don't know where all these are, and some libraries don't have 5 opens. Some libraries have 3 opens. Some libraries have 2. Some libraries might have like a half open or a open edge or open bell or whatever, right? So I often will open this window in Superior when I'm at the point where I'm going in and I'm manually adjusting articulations, which is like down the line. Right now, when I'm talking about hi-hat, so right now, we'll see which open hi-hat I'm triggering right now, okay? I'm triggering open 2. Right now I don't care. I just, as long as it's an open hat, I'm okay. But once I start getting in and really tweaking this, that might be not open enough, or it might be, I might want the open hat in like the pre-chorus, like open 2, and then when the chorus kicks in, I want it to kind of change a little bit, so then it goes to open 4. So I will pull this up all the time to look at it, okay? And we will, like I said, we will dig into that for sure. Do I ever use the Tune Track MIDI? Yes, and that's actually the next thing we're gonna jump into here once we kind of just adjust some of the velocities and stuff. Everything cowbell. Oh, don't go there. I'll do it, and I'll load a cowbell on every single one of these tracks, and you'll be getting like nine cowbells at the same time. Change the duration. Yeah, good. I have SD3 and GGD. Never thought of laying them over before. Absolutely. Layer all the stuff, right? Because most of us are using samples when we mix. What is that? You're just layering a recorded drum sample on top of an existing drum track. So that's kind of, it's no different than doing what we're doing here. And like I said, I don't just layer for the fact of layering. If your main kit, you're like, yeah, it sounds really real, but maybe it's not like hyped enough. It doesn't sound mixed, quote unquote mixed. And you're like, oh, I want to layer a sample or a whole other kit on top of this that's maybe a little bit more hyped. Then yeah, go to another kit and keep this intact, right? Keep this intact. Sorry, let me switch over here. Keep this intact, and then just basically utilize the other kits for whatever you're missing. Okay, so if you look at the comments over here, eDrums 1 is insert main drum programming, the most realistic. I use number 2 to add more of a hyped sound. I use 3 as an optional hype sound, and I use 4 as kind of like an optional, like depending on the song. What do I need? Do I need something really organic sounding? Do I need something super hypey? Do I need an extra set of toms? Do I need an extra set of just kick or snare or whatever? That's kind of my like just alternate whatever I need. But I usually have a realistic kit. I usually have 2 options for like a hyped kit, and then I'll have my optional kind of alternate, whatever I might need on that end of things. So let me get my chat back here. Okay. Let's go to the back to the chat, and then I'm going to get back into this. Learning, I have one song finished that I fully drawn the drums on. Somehow kind of similar process. Yeah. Would I do the same approach for more intense metal drums? What is faster? Whatever's faster for you. Some people draw stuff in. Some people use like the grooves, the MIDI grooves that are, or MIDI presets that you can buy, or MIDI. I guess they're called groove packs. MIDI grooves. A lot of them come with some of these programs that we'll kind of crack into. You got to try what works for you. For me, I do a variety of things. I use the grooves. If I'm doing something that has a lot of detail on, let's say, like the hi-hat or has ghost notes or something like that, I will find the groove. And maybe what we'll do is we'll program the verse by using a groove, and then we'll edit the groove. And then the chorus, I know exactly the pattern I want. There's not a lot of like ghosty notes. There's not a lot of weird kind of little things, little detail-y things on the hi-hat. That I can just go and play in, and then we'll go and edit the velocities after the fact. So it's just a matter of what's quickest for you. And for me, it's based off the part, and it's based off of kind of like what the song I'm working on happens to be. So, free and converts from any drum program. Oh, there's a drum program. How do you the drum program? Can't remember. Oh yeah, if somebody's got a drum program, if somebody's got a MIDI like translator that runs in real time, I know there's a website that you can like upload and then it will spit out something else. That doesn't really help us while we're like working, right? That's okay if somebody sends you a MIDI file and you need to get it into yours. But yeah, if there's a way to kind of like really solidly translate to all the different things, that would be awesome. Otherwise, you're just kind of at the mercy of hoping that the different plugin developers include a MIDI map for whatever you happen to be using. So. Perfect. Thanks. Easy Drummer has MIDI Learn. Yep. And we're going to do MIDI Learn. It's really cool. And I don't know, maybe you weren't talking about the groove MIDI Learn. Maybe you were just talking about like key mapping, but, do you go to other kits or samples before parallel compression to punch it up? Yeah, I don't have any parallel compression running right now. So when I'm programming drums, I'm not really in like mix mode, and parallel compression is a little bit more of like compartmentalized mix thing. So yeah, I will add another kit if I feel like I'm needing some punch, or I'm needing some hype, is like what I like to call it. Yeah, I'll layer another kit. Or I might, what I might do is I might find like in Superior Drummer, for instance, let me go here. I might go in Superior Drummer here. I'll go in and I'll find like, maybe I'll find, one of the auxiliaries. Actually, I don't have any auxiliaries set up right now, but you can basically send everything to a bus and then have a compressor on the bus, and then I'll print that as like a comp track, right? So there's a bunch of different ways you can go about that. So, okay, let's hold your questions until maybe the next one. Oh, actually, you know what? I'll finish this off. I think we're almost at the bottom here. Do you have a preset for Superior Drummer, sounds and mix, not mapping? Yeah, I've got a ton. I've got every time I tweak anything, I save a preset. I've got starting points for a lot of the different libraries. So if I pull up a library, instead of having to kind of be like, yeah, there's a few things I like, there's a few things I'm going to change, I kind of go and make starting points, and then I tweak them from there. So maybe that's something I'll give away on the weekly newsletter next week. Maybe. So make sure you go to the website, sign up. Just need a client breathing over your shoulder. Well, it's funny because, you know, the majority of the programming that I do, believe it or not, is when I'm producing a song and the song's either kind of being written or the guitar player's kind of like playing the guitar part, or, you know, start figuring something out, and I'll just be listening, and I'll just put some headphones on and I'll start programming drums, you know, while they're kind of getting set up. So that way, by the time we start like writing the song, they can play to drums. And same thing, like when I'm doing that process, all I care about is the part and the kind of like the timing of the part, and everything can be gridded. It doesn't have to sound realistic. The sounds don't have to be perfect. It's just a matter of getting the part down. So exactly what you just saw me do is kind of what I would do in a session while we're writing a song, once I kind of figure out like what we're doing, right? So do you ever run into issues with phase when layering? Absolutely. How do you deal with it? Well, you flip phase, or you start adjusting stuff after you print. Okay, so you can flip phase. In most of these programs, you can flip the phase on a lot of like the quote unquote microphone or track channels. If that doesn't fix it, like if there's a little bit of a flam because like one of them's a little bit, some samplers have a little bit of just a little bit of like a latency, not latency, but some of the samples, once you print them, they're not always aligned perfectly. Sometimes that sounds cool. Sometimes you gotta basically move them after we print them. And printing all these things and bussing them out and printing them, that's actually like the very last stage. So for anybody, again, who has downloaded the template, you'll see there are all these audio tracks. These are already set up for me to basically just bus out and print. And so then I have audio of all of these things. I've got the room mic separate from the overheads. I've got the overheads separate from the snares, this, that, and the other thing. And then this will be all audio that you can go and look at the waveforms and see what's out of phase. What do you like the sound of out of phase? Because sometimes that can sound good. What samples need to be kind of shifted around a little bit, and then you just optimize that, okay? All right, so we're gonna hide those for now because we don't need those. Let's get back into this. MIDI remap also has a translate plugin. Okay, cool. I'm gonna check that out. Thank you, David. Okay, let's dig in. Okay, so we got our part. Let's actually go into let's go into Superior really quickly. And again, doesn't have to be Superior, right? Like you can use so many of these programs, like your Savior, right? You know, actually, maybe we should let's just use this as an option, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of an option. So here, well, I think I actually turned this off. Let me try this here. Let's just turn some of this stuff back on. How about that? All right. So we can go through here and find different options, right? You can go through and find... I love it. Okay. Maybe we shouldn't use this for this because I've only got the European metal grooves installed. This song's not really a European metal groove kind of song, is it? All right. So, but the point is, a lot of these programs have what they refer to as grooves or MIDI patterns or whatever they happen to be, and you can go and audition them and use them as starting points. So let's go to the verse of this song for a second, okay? I'm just gonna loop it. Okay, so you can do one of two things. You can just go right now. I guess the last thing I was looking for was a fill, but we don't want a fill. Let's clear that. We want a straight. Let's do a standard. What do we want our power hand to be? We'll do hi-hat closed. Here we go. Oh, awesome. Thanks, David. BFD Player is free for anyone needing a drum program. BFD was a little bit of like the OG of these crazy drum programs that were like uber realistic with bleed and room mics and all this stuff. But BFD is really like I said, it was the first one to do it. Like, oh shit, that's what we want to do. Like, it was pretty awesome. Still great to this day. I haven't used BFD in a while. I should probably check it out. It's been a while since I did it, but anyways. Okay, so now what we can do. So go through. Okay, why isn't this syncing? Okay, oh, preview an original tempo. Thank you very much. That's cool. Okay, let's use that. Okay, so you literally can just go and scroll through grooves, and each program has a various way to kind of go through and filter out what you want. So I just picked a standard straight beat with a closed hi-hat, and I got this really cool kind of syncopated thing going on. So I'm going to grab that, and maybe what I'll do is I'll use that for the second half of the verse, and then for the first, so let's play that for a second just so we can hear what that sounds like. Okay. So it's boom. Boom, boom, right? Okay, so Superior Drummer has this thing called tap to find. So now what I can do is I can tap in kind of like a rough beat of what I want, and it will basically filter out a bunch of options to give me that kind of the groove I'm looking after. So 4. Okay, that's 16th. Okay, so now I say show results. And it says 92% matching. Let's hear what this one is. Pretty close. Let's use that one. Okay, so now we picked this groove here. Let me scroll over. We picked this groove here just by scrolling through and finding one that was cool, right? We picked this one by tapping in a program or tapping in a kind of a beat that we wanted to use, right? And then we're going to go through and kind of edit them together. So I just duplicated this because it was only a 4-bar loop. So let's see what we got here, right? Gonna need a fill there. Probably don't want that fill there. Okay, so we're going to dig into this. This is going to be cool. This is a cool really cool pattern. So I like what's going on with the hi-hats in this pattern. Okay, so let's bring this snare down here. Actually, where's our snare? Right there. So there's different snare articulations all over the place. Let's bring that down so it's actually where the rest of our snares are. Yeah, let's get rid of that fill. So we're gonna paste over that fill there, right? Okay, so let's get rid of that. We'll copy that and put it in its place. So I'm just taking bar 2 and putting it into bar 4, so that way we don't have that kind of like weird fill at that weird spot. Just make sure you trim, because with MIDI you can see the different. Oh, no, you can't see the different notes. With MIDI, you can see the different notes popping up based off of where you're trimming it here, right? So I want that one there. Okay, so let's hear how that sounds. Okay. So it's really interesting. This is actually a really great way to highlight like how real this feels, and then when this comes in, how fake that feels, right? And the reason why this sounds quote unquote fake is this is just all on the grid and everything's like full bore 127 velocities. There's no ghost notes. There's nothing. Like it's just straight up as if a robot played it, right? Whereas these grooves, somebody went and played this in. There's a lot of articulations. Even when we go and look at like the velocities are kind of all over the place, which is cool. So one of the things I'm noticing here, and again, this is very specific to what I'm doing. So This is more me letting you know kind of what my thought process is as I'm hearing things. I like the part in the second half of the verse. I like where the part kind of evolves to, but it almost feels like there's a dynamic dip. It almost feels like the dynamics come down, whereas we want the dynamics to come up. So there's obviously could be the part, but I don't think it's the part. I think it's the velocities. I think it's just dynamically those came from two different libraries. One was played harder than the other, so be it. And you can actually see that here. You can see these velocities are all pretty high. These ones are all a little bit lower. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab the kicks and the snares, and I'm just going to turn up the velocities slightly. So I know my kicks here, and I know my snares there. Let me actually zoom in a little bit on this for you guys. Okay. So as you can see up here, I'm in the second half of the verse. I'm going to grab all of these kicks and all of these snares, and I'm just going to go in and turn them up by clicking and dragging on the velocities. Okay. All right, so now let's hear if this kind of gets a little bit more, a little louder as opposed to quieter. Almost too much, right? Okay, so let's bring that down a little bit now. The other thing is, right now he's playing a rim shot. I'm going to go straight on the main snare there. Let's try that. Okay, I need that snare to get louder. So let's go full bore on that and then bring it back down. Okay. The high toms are a little Toto for me. Let's make this a little bit more rock. So okay, this is sounding good. This is feeling good. Let's go in and find some fills. So for fills, I love using the groove libraries because fills are very, very feel based. Very much. That's kind of like where like the drummer, when you don't have a drummer, especially if you're not a drummer, the fills are where like things kind of start getting tough. So let's go in and grab a couple fills. Ooh, that could be cool. Right at going right into the chorus here. So let's drop that there. Okay, let's check out. Let's try that one there. Okay. Okay, obviously I put it in the wrong spot. Let's change our grid here. Okay. Okay, we need a crash cymbal on the downbeat there. So now we're just going to go draw that in. We don't need to go back to anything, right? But instead of drawing it in, let's grab the hi-hat, like I said earlier, and let's drag it to the cymbal that's next to the hi-hat because he's over on this side of the kit. He's going to be playing this kind of jazzy hi-hat thing, right? Or he's coming out of that and then going into this more straight hi-hat thing. It was like he played it. All right, cool. Um, okay, I got to adjust the velocity. It sounds like the kick drum's not as loud there, so we got to bring that up. Let's bring up that snare a little bit. That big hit there, let's make that a big flam, right? So, first of all, let's crank up the velocity on that. Okay, we are. So here's actually a cool little trick with flams. If nobody knows what a flam is, this is a flam. Kind of like it's like a little like a hitting on the same drum or a different like hitting at the same time, which is like slight difference, right? So if you're gonna do a flam on a snare drum, depending on what library you're using, there are different snare articulations. So that's kind of like might be like your center hit. So like your D1, the note D1 might be your like regular center hit. And this is kind of like a little bit of a kind of like a ghost note thing. And then you've got E, sounds like it's a rim shot. And there might be like a left hand and a right hand. Some of the libraries do have that, right? So utilize the different articulations so that way, because if you just use the same hit, sometimes that doesn't sound as good as using a different articulation. The other thing you can do, let's use the same articulation for now, just so we're not complicating things too much. The other thing you want to do is you want to have one of these be louder than the other. If they're the same velocity, they're going to be triggering kind of like the same sample. So pick one of them. If we've got any drummers in the house, this is an interesting question. Okay, hands up to the drummers in the house. If you're in the chat, quick hands up if you're a drummer, because I want you guys to answer this question for me. It's funny, I used to ask this to producers all the time when I used to do a lot of editing for other producers or even engineers. When I used to do a lot of editing, I used to ask drummers and producers this. Second hit on a flam is louder. Okay, so that's what I was going to ask. Right hand harder on flam. Okay, but is that your first hit or second hit? I don't know what's left or right. So second hit is louder. Okay, so there seems to be a consensus that the second hit's louder, okay? All right, so cool. We're going to do that, right? So second hit is going to be louder. So we're going to bring that one down a little bit. So like this. Okay, awesome. Okay, good. Here's the real question. If we were putting this on the grid, right on the grid, what note goes where? So here's option number one. The first hit is on the grid. The second hit's after. Here's option number two. The second hit's on the grid, and the first hit is a little bit like jumping the gun a little bit. And here's option number three. Straddling the grid. Okay, Pablo says you can straddle it. So yeah, I just straddled it. I want to know the drummers. What's right? Straddle. Okay. First hit leads into. Second one should be on the beat. I'm gonna open the chat here. You guys can see these popping in here. 130-second triple note or foot straddle. Option two, the first hit is a grace note onto the hit. Option three, straddle. Option three, second should be on the beat as close to it. So maybe straddle, not a drummer too. Okay. This is perfect. This is so great. Like, what I was going to tell you was when I used to edit drums for producers and other engineers, when I was kind of getting started, I would always ask them, what do you want me to do with flams? And it's amazing. Some of them are like, what do you mean? And I'm like, do you want it on the first hit on the beat, second hit on the beat, straddle it? Like, what do you want to do? And to be honest with you, there was no consensus. Producer A would say straddle it. Producer B would say the first hit's on the grid. Producer C would say put the second hit on the grid. So I just use my ears, and based off the part, based off of the way that the drum's kind of speaking, how it's all, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Whatever sounds best. Okay. So we're just going to do that. Okay. Let's jump into this and we're just going to place it wherever it sounds best. Okay. Yeah. So let's back it up a little bit here. Okay. Okay. So that first hit's a little bit light for me, and I feel like it's jumping the gun just a hair. So let's shift it back. No, maybe I like it better the way it was. Let's hear that. I think it was option number 2. Let's hear option number 2, where that second hit's almost right on the grid. Yeah, I don't mind that. Let's just a little bit back. Okay, cool. Okay, so now one of the things that you need to watch out for, especially if you forget that you have a flam, watch what happens if I go in and quantize this. If I go in and quantize everything. Where'd the flam go? You say, oh, it got rid of the flam. No, it didn't. You just actually gave yourself a double hit. There's an option in Pro Tools that says remove duplicate hits right here, or remove duplicate notes. So it will get rid of one of those drums, so that way you're not having like a double trigger going on at the same time. But more importantly is we actually just got rid of a part. Like the flam is a part. It's not just a sound. It's not a technical thing. It's like this is a creative part, right? So we need to be aware of that. Okay. So make sure if we go then and record the break or the bridge or something like that, I very rarely will select all and quantize. Okay. Exclude within that range. Oh, what? Oh, yeah. I guess you could do that, right? You could quantize and then just exclude it. So, yeah. So you can basically exclude. Couple different options you can do on that. So yeah, it's cool. All right, let's so now we've got our verse sounding pretty real because we use grooves, right? We adjusted some of the velocity to make it like just work a little bit better for the part and make it sound like it was a cohesive part. Now we're going to go in and dig in to basically how do we now get this to sound real, right? Okay, so I've got a couple different options for this. Option number 1. We can go find a groove that's similar to what I want and see if we can just find something that's basically right? Or right? We could go and just find something like that. We already did that, right? So I'm going to show you a different way. This is something I do quite a bit. I want to give this some real feel. So instead of just worrying about the part, I got the part, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and replay the, let's do the hi-hats first. I'm going to go in and replay the hi-hats. And this time instead of worrying about playing the part with the kick and the snare and everything, I'm just going to play the hi-hats and I'm just going to listen and I'm going to try to play it so I'm giving it some real feel with the velocities, okay? So let's delete the hi-hats here, right? I'm just going to get rid of them. And now all I have to play is the hi-hat. Oh, quick thing. If you're in Pro Tools, there's a little button up here. This is MIDI merge. That means you can overdub on top of MIDI without erasing what's underneath. If you're playing a piano and you want to punch in MIDI, you don't want to play over top of the piano you just did, so you want to take that off. When you're doing like drum parts where you want to program a hi-hat on top of the kick and snare, you need to have that on. All right? Okay, so let's turn on the click. We got the click on. We're going to go in, and I'm going to find which hi-hat I like. So again, just giving you an example here. Okay, I'm gonna go find that open one. Let's for the first part of the chorus, before it goes to the crash, we're gonna use open 1. And then when it comes back in after the crash part, we're gonna go to open 4. Okay? Actually, open 1 has a little bit of a clutch on the end of it. All right, let's use open 2. Yeah, we'll go 2 to 4. All right, here we go. Oh, how about I record? Off right now. I'm gonna go to hi-hat 4. Okay, so obviously I just played right through crash cymbals and all that stuff, so we got to go clean that up. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We can do one or two things now to give this some realism. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is change my durations. Remember, boom. Okay. Good. Now all the durations are where I want them. All right. So a few different things we can do. So as you can see, my hi-hats now have a little bit of dynamic variation. I did know that was a little bit of an outlier there. That was a little bit lower than the rest, right? But now there's just a little bit of variation. So I'm going to listen through and see if there are any hi-hats in there that I thought were too quiet or too loud, and we can adjust those, okay? Oh, while we're doing this, we can also get rid of a hi-hat on any spot that there's a crash. So right off the downbeat, there's a crash. We'll get rid of the hi-hat. So there's one in here that's a little too loud. Let's bring those down. This one's a little quiet. So let's get rid of that one. That one's a little loud. The ones before it were a little quiet. Get rid of that one. Okay, so now I've gone in and just done a little bit of micro adjustment. Now that last part, I wanted kind of full, like a little bit more like full bore, right? You can see there's not a ton of variation. Maybe that one sounded a little bit out of place there. And maybe just to make it sound a little different there when he's playing the fill part, maybe we go to open 5. Sounds too loud. Okay, so now the other thing that I'm noticing, and you guys have probably noticed it, and you're like, dude, you can't play that hi-hat worth crap. The timing's a little bit off, right? Now, obviously, it's playing the part. I'm relatively in time, but it's a little bit off. So instead of quantizing full bore like we did when we did the part, I'm just going to quantize this. Just kind of just give it a little bit of room to maneuver. So instead of going full strength, I'm going to go to like maybe 80. Okay, let's go 75. So now we're going to apply that on the hi-hat only. I just selected the hi-hats. Now we're going to listen through. And if there's any one that we feel is out of time, we can fix it. But if you zoom in, you'll see they're not exactly on the grid, right? So we're a little bit ahead, a little bit ahead, a little bit ahead, a little bit ahead. I mean, I'm a little bit behind. Like this is a little bit more realistic. Now, good drummers typically have tendencies. good drummers, usually that's kind of what groove is, right? Some drummers will play their right hand, the kind of like, if they're playing a 16th note, the 16th note between the 8th notes can sometimes be like a little bit behind or a little bit on top or whatever. That's kind of what gives drummers their groove. So what I would say is if you are going in and manually adjusting timing to give it some life, there's not a lot of drummers who are like ahead, and then one like way behind. Typically, they're consistent, right? So that one that was behind, we might want to move that one. Or maybe we leave it in to give it a little bit of a, oh, that something changed there a little bit. It gives it a little bit of like hyper realism, I guess. So let's go and listen to how this is sounding. Oh, there was a loud one that stuck out there to me. Let's bring those two down. I'll bring that one down even more. Okay, so right here, I kind of do like a little bit of like not a fill, but kind of I go got to, right? So a drummer's naturally going to probably play that last part a little bit louder because he's kind of like leading into something, right? So I'm actually going to change the articulation on this hi-hat. I can't get any louder, but what I can do is we're on open hi-hat 2. Let's push that to 4. Let's push that last one to 5. Okay, so now you hear how the hi-hat changes a little bit. That's the way like a drummer would naturally kind of dynamically build up that part. Cool. Okay, this is sounding good. Okay, there's one other little trick I want to show you while we're in this talking about timing and quantizing, okay? You know what we're going to do? We're going to leave the kick and the snare dead nuts on the grid. When this chorus kicks in, we want this to be like modern rock, like just in time, everything lined up perfect, right? And that's a sound. That's a sound that's been very popular for a while now, and I don't know if it's going to be going away anytime soon. So one of the ways that you can bring some of this kind of realism into a track is by having what I referred, like if you hear somebody say shells versus brass, shells are like the kick, snare, toms, brass is all the cymbals for obvious reasons, right? One of the ways you can bring in a little bit of realism is to have like the main kick and snare parts be on the grid, and then have the brass and maybe the toms have a little bit of movement to it. And this can give it just a little bit of realism, okay? The other thing that I want to, even if you are going right on the grid with certain things, this is something to watch out for. This is a big one for me. I can hear, like, not that I can hear this all the time, but I can hear this on a lot of drums that people send me. Just trying to zoom in so you guys can see this. Okay, so we got a kick and a crash. Both of them right on the grid. To be absolutely perfect timing with your foot and your stick, very, very difficult to be this precise. So something as simple as, and you might not be, in this particular scenario, you might not hear it. Let's actually solo this for a second. Maybe you can hear it. Okay, so listen to that. Okay. Now I'm just going to push that up just a hair. Or we can bring it back just a hair. It's very subtle. Very subtle, but if you do this throughout an entire track, it makes a difference. And here's where it really makes a difference. Where was that spot where we did a double crash or a crash at the same time. Right here. This is where I hear it a lot on programmed drums. When you got a double crash and a kick happening all at the same time. So what I like to do is just kind of straddle this like this. Versus or this is something you guys need to experiment with. If you can't hear the difference, do whatever you want. I can hear the difference. And when you're talking about these little maneuvers over the course of all the drums throughout the entire song, just these little tiny little subtle movements and not having all this stuff hitting at the same time, even though it's hitting on the same beat, it's not exactly all lined up. That makes it sound like a crash and a kick, as opposed to a sample of a kick and two crashes all happening at the same time. To me, that's what it sounds like. So I'm going to jump in. We're going to do a giveaway. Let's do the next giveaway here. John, are you there? Okay. What did I say I'm giving away this time? Are we doing clarify? Or are we doing... I can't even remember. Okay. Yeah, Superior Drummer. Am I giving away Superior Drummer? Not tonight, unfortunately. It's Drum Forge night, guys. Come on. Okay, John, we'll pick another winner here. John, clarify winners. Wyatt. Bonus points for the best CB face capture. Oh, shit. Am I going to want to see this? Oh, no. No. I can't wait. Okay. Congrats, Wyatt. All right. Well, that means, what do we have left? We're going to do Savior. Okay. So you guys know the drill. Make sure you're subscribed so you can give us a thumbs up and a wave in the chat. Do your best to help us build the community and the following here. So share the link on your Instagram feeds. Hashtag Chris Baseford. Let's keep the let's keep the whole thing going here. All right. Back at it. Congratulations, Wyatt. That's awesome. I can't wait to see the I can't wait to see the screenshot you got. Nobody's ever hypercritical of seeing themselves on film. I can't wait. Or photos. All right. Okay, guys, we are killing it. You guys are killing it. You're staying with this. So I'm gonna hit some questions really quickly here in the chat. Somebody asked, how long before you start going crazy doing this? Yeah. You know what? You can go crazy and you can start like not hearing things. It's very important. And again, I preach this pretty much with the whole production, mixing, engineering, like have a process, right? So if you find when you're doing this, if you're like, I can't be worrying about velocities throughout the entire song, but I can do one chunk of the song and do like velocities and timing and fills all at the same time. That keeps you a little bit more engaged and you're not going crazy just worrying about like velocities. Like figure out what works for you, but have a system. So I like personally, I like compartmentalizing things. Like even when I was editing drums, I would do one thing throughout the whole song. And then I would go back and do step 2, the whole song. And then I'd go back in step 3, whole song. Some guys would do one section, 1, 2, 3, move on to the next section, 1, 2, 3, move on to the next section, 1, 2, 3. Like when I say 1, 2, 3, whatever the steps are. So for me, with drum programming, I like to program the part first, right? Then I like to go through and adjust any velocities, timing, right? And then I like to go and start once I've got the velocities and the timing and the part the way that I want, then I start kind of going in and digging around for sounds, right? Which we'll come up to in a second. We're not completely done on parts because there is a couple things I want to throw in a few fills. And then I also want to show you guys kind of another little trick that you can do with kind of grabbing elements from grooves and then supplementing them into your kind of more like kind of finger or drawn in beats. So there is another way to add a little bit more of realism to kind of what we're doing here as well. So, okay. Back into the chat. Logic has a humanized function in MIDI. Pro Tools does not. Pro Tools does. I'll show you what it does. And it works. You can play around with it. I'm just, they've got what I think they call it like grooves. It's a quantizing groove, right? And there's also you can also randomize stuff. So we'll go in and I'll show you a little bit about that here. Who is saying here? Good question. Realism is hard to accomplish, but totally worth it. You know what? It's like, if that's what you're after, right? When I'm programming drums, if it's something that I'm producing a song and we're using programmed drums, even if it's just as a way to demo out the song or a way to build the song and then we're going to replace it later, I don't want to be hearing really like just like I want it to sound as real as possible. I like things in time. That's why I figured out these little tricks to be like, yeah, I want to keep the kick and the snare on the grid, but how can we make it sound a little bit more real? And when you're dealing with a real drummer, there's a lot more variables. Just they can't hit the drum the same way twice. Like it's just like theoretically impossible. So you got to figure out other ways to kind of just trick the ear into being like, subconsciously, this is a little bit more real. And like I said, moving things off the grid just a hair, changing velocities just a little bit. Things like that can make a huge difference once they all add up. These little incremental things, by the end of the track, everything starts to you're like, oh shit, that doesn't actually sound so fake anymore, right? So the live drum sound is awesome. Cool, man. Yeah, they're like I said, all the drum programs, they sound really good. And here's the thing. Whoever recorded the libraries or mixed the libraries, they have like a sound that they gravitate towards. They tweaked it to where they were happy, right? Find a program, find a library, find, like with the Drum Forge stuff. They do a lot of their the drum shots are like guys who make records, right? They're from guys like myself. And so if you like the way a guy's albums sound, like you're probably going to like his drum samples. Because he probably made the album, he tweaked the album until he was happy, and he's probably tweaked the drum samples until he was happy. So there's lots of great sounding stuff out there. They're literally, the options are pretty much endless at this point, which is pretty cool. Is the stream going to be replayable? So many great tips. I'm going to miss taking notes. No. Yeah, don't take notes. Don't take notes. This is going to be up indefinitely. Okay. Pay attention. Have fun. Take notes if you want to stay engaged. If you don't want to watch, if you don't want to spend another 3 hours watching later. But yeah, I keep these up online, and so if you go to my YouTube page, sometimes they show up just in the main feed, but sometimes you actually have to click on the live stream playlists in order to get all the other ones as well. So it is up there for you guys. Okay. You can also hit random velocities and then just move the accents, but it's not great sounding. Yes, correct. Drummers aren't random. Like a live drummer is usually, there's a pattern. They usually have tendencies. It's not completely random. So I wish, and again, love people's input on, somebody just said a funny comment. My drummer can't hold a steady tempo. Forget about velocity. Yeah, very true. It would be really cool if the MIDI functions would give you kind of the way you can do grooves with timing. If you could do kind of like velocity grooves, because that's the other thing is like this is actually something I completely forget to acknowledge until like I get into the conversation with somebody about it. Sometimes groove is actually velocity. So if I do this, right? Or right? Let's say those are on the grid, but they're all the same velocity. Now I'm going to do... Now it's going... There's an accent there. That can make it feel like it's grooving timing-wise, even though those might be all on the grid. So it'd be cool if they would give you like an option to almost like do a pattern with velocities. That would be awesome. Because ultimately that's what a lot of drummers, they do have tendencies. They've got patterns, right? It's not random. So I don't use random a lot. I don't use random because that's the problem, is random makes it random. The only time I'll use that is if I'm like, I got to get everything off a 127, and then that gives me at least a starting point, and then I'll go in and just move stuff that I'm hearing is out, right? So do I prefer programmed drums or drums played by a real drummer? Great question. Probably like the biggest, most like big picture question we'll probably have all night. To be honest with you, I love the sonics and the control and the flexibility of programmed drums. But I really love the kind of like all the things that we're trying to fake. I like a little bit of like the randomness. I like a little bit of the just the fact that you can't get two hits at the same time, two cymbals, one ringing over the like cymbals is to me where things can start sounding a little fake. I'm gonna hear it in the cymbals before I hear it in everything else, because the cymbals are just, even when like I've sampled cymbals before, and like you hit once and you hit it again, and you're like, can you hit it the same way as you hit it the one before? It's so hard to hit it the same way twice. So there is just a very random nature to the sound and the way that it overlaps on each other. So in my perfect world, like if there is a perfect world, we haven't even spoken about the fact that a lot of drummers come up with great parts, right? A lot of drummers have, like I said, they have those tendencies or they have these feels. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes you want to straighten it out. Sometimes you want to move it somewhere else. That's fine. But if I have the choice, I would love to, I prefer a live drummer pretty much the majority of the time, because here's the thing. I can always supplement that with samples. So I can always take a live drummer and then replace the kicks and the snares and the toms and maybe just keep his cymbals, or even sample the replace the cymbals, replace all the parts into a sampler. But I've got his feel, I've got his parts, I've got the different dynamics. Like even if we're replacing all of that with sound, with the sampled sounds, I still like having that. So, but like I said, my perfect world is like getting cymbals live with a drummer, getting his parts. And I also like lots of room mics. I do like the way that room mics, like actual room mics, when the kit is actually going through the room and everything's happening at the same time. Obviously, when we're talking about room mics with like Superior or some of these other programs, those are like 8 audio files or 16 audio files playing at the same time. That's not everything hitting one microphone at the same time. They recorded that and then just layered it, right? So it's not the same thing. So I don't know. There's pros and cons to both. This is like philosophy questions that we could probably sit here all night and talk about. But have you ever tracked E-drums on an album before? Yeah, absolutely. And it's great. E-drums is kind of become a little bit of kind of like the hybrid approach. I know quite a few guys, and I've done this a few times myself as well. I mean, I've done full E-drums on album, where the drummer's playing an E-kit. There's still a lot of cleanup work that needs to be done. There's still a lot of fixing velocity stuff, because, the drummer might hit a certain way, but it doesn't trigger the velocity that it should have. So there's still a lot of cleanup. It's not perfect. But the thing that I'm hearing about, and I'm getting tracks from people to mix a lot lately, is using E-drums for the shells and live cymbals. So you don't have to have necessarily a big room. It's not really that loud. You just have overheads and some room mics. You can play all the parts. Yes, you hear the thwack of depending on what kit you're using, you can hear the thwack of hitting the mesh head or the plastic head or something. But once you get all the sounds in, because you're going to be lining everything up anyways, everything's kind of covering that up. It's not an issue. It's a non-issue. Yeah, it's a great way to do it. That's a really good point. That goes back to the flam. Live drummers lead with different hands and have different patterns. Can help if you're trying to emulate a drummer you program for. Absolutely. And that's when people talk about feel. Feel isn't this magic unicorn thing that nobody can actually quantify. A drummer's feel is extremely quantifiable, and it's in my opinion, it's one of maybe, well, two for sure, maybe three things. Number one, it's again their timing, but it's not just whether they're on the grid or off the grid. It's their timing relative to what came in front or behind of it. So some drummers, like I said, they'll play their eighth notes really straight, but if there's a 16th between that gets a little lazy, right? And that's just their tendency. Or I know some drummers where their kicks and their snares are right on the grid, but their cymbals are just a little ahead. And some people love that. And they're like, man, I love that guy's feel. And they're like, I don't know what it is. It's just, it's like, well, no, you do know what it is. Whatever that thing that's kind of keeping the time, not just the kicks and the snares, but the hi-hat or the ride or the crash, whatever. It's almost like pushing the song as opposed to kind of like laying back. So it might be somebody likes that drummer's feel because of the energy. The other thing that like I said, I notice a lot of drummers, their feel comes from their dynamics. So just having a dynamic pattern can sometimes make it feel like the timing's different. And then obviously the parts they're playing, how they play the parts, where they're putting accents, are they doing ghost notes? How they hit the drum is very important as well. I know some guys who just like the way they hit the drum just sings a certain way that everybody loves. So that's actually one of the things. So I used to do a lot of work with Tommy Lee from Motley Crue, and just hitting the drum hard isn't that's not all of it. It's like the way in which you hit the drum. It's like, do you bury the stick in the head? Do you kind of pop do you bounce off the head? Tommy has a way of hitting the drum to where it sounds big and lively and aggressive. Has sustain, has attack, it kind of has everything. Like just the way he hits the drum is just, I don't exactly know like what physically is going on, but the drum sounds different. And like when I worked at the Chop Shop with Scott Humphrey, we had a drum kit that stayed set up most of the time, and whatever band would come in would play it. And there were some times where we would have, we would do something with Tommy, and then another drummer would come in and nothing changed. The mics are in the same spot. The settings are in the same spot. The tuning of the drum, nothing changed. And the drums sound very different. Like I couldn't punch that drummer in on the song we were tracking before, just because, not the volume, I can match volume, it's just the way the drum sounded. So that's a big thing with live drummers as well. Speaking of cymbals, what's your favorite cymbal library that is the best realistic sound? Some are really flat and not as lush. That's a great question. And I think what we're going to do, I'm going to get back to the programming. We're going to put in a couple fills, and then I think we're going to start going through sounds, because this is something that I know exactly what you mean with the cymbals. I'm very picky with the cymbals, and that's one of the reasons why I have all of these different kits going on at the same time, because some of these kits, I love the drums and I love the rooms, but don't love the cymbals. Vice versa. There's some kits that I love the cymbals, but the drums are, they're okay. They're not bad. They're just not like what I really love. And I do find the variations of cymbals are very different. So there's a couple libraries that I like in Superior specifically for the cymbals that we will dig into in a second. So, Jeff, real cymbals. Yes. Jeff knows all about that. E-drums, live cymbals. Absolutely. So this is for out-of-time drummers. Yeah, exactly. How often do you mix E-drums compared to acoustics? These days, I would probably say it's 50-50, maybe. Kind of just depends, maybe like kind of what projects I'm working on. But I'd say probably 50. It's probably 50-50. So, or hit like monsters every hit. Exactly. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got one last giveaway. That'll give away right before we wrap tonight, and that's the Drumforge Savior. I think there's one more. Did we give away these all? John, can you chime in? Did we already give away Soap and Arcus? I can't remember. I'm spacing out. It just shows you that I'm like really engaged on programming drums right now. So, okay, let's do this. More. Yep, exactly. Here we go. Yes, already did Soap and Arcus. Thanks, Tom. Okay. All right. So Savior we'll do at the end. All right. So let's dive back in here really quickly. And I'm going to we're going to go back and figure out where we need a few more little spots here. Okay. Okay, let's get out of solo. Okay, that cymbal off the top sounds a little light. Let's go a little harder on that. Okay, so here's where we're gonna do a little we're gonna do a little drawing. Okay, so I want to hear a tuka. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to play that. Okay, but I also don't want to draw it in because I want to have a little bit of velocity information there and possibly even a little bit of feel there. So what I'm gonna do is I am gonna play it in, but I'm not gonna try to do it on the toms. I'm gonna try to I'm gonna do it on different drums. I'm just gonna go. Oh. Where's my, let me find my, so disregard the sounds. I just want to get the MIDI in there and then we're going to move it around. Okay. All right, here we go. Wrong key. Okay, actually, I got to get rid of this. Thank you very much. Okay, so I don't want ga. I want daga, right? So, okay, let's put that on the snare. Daga. Go up. Sorry. Okay, so that sounds a little fake to me. Why does it sound fake? Well, because with my tiny little keyboard, it's hard to get velocities in there. So let's start imagining what the velocities would be if a drummer was playing it. He's obviously left and right-handed. He's going to have a little tendencies, which is a strong hand. Daga duga. So he's probably towards the end going to probably start trailing off a little bit, right? So that's better. Sorry, I got to ask a question. I got to answer a question here because my buddy Jeff just asked a question. Had to check out Flams. Do you prefer between the two hits, first on the grid, second on the grid, asking for a friend? Well, I asked all the drummers in the house, and there was not a consensus. And so I determined that with all the producers I worked for, there was not a consensus. So we basically just kind of pick whatever sounds right for the part. I would say if I had to pick, if I had to pick one and just blindly pick, I'd probably straddle it. That's probably my starting point. But like I said, it kind of sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. So, all right. Okay, let's try. I'm gonna try something here to kind of keep this beat going. I'm just putting a kick underneath it, just going through. Bring that down a little bit. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to do, I would say a lot of drummers, if they're riding on a cymbal, they're probably also doing a little bit of foot something. So I'm going to just put that in really quickly. Okay. And I'm actually going to just listen through, and I'm not going to quantize that. I'm just going to look for ones that are really out. Because I don't want them to be exactly on with the crash. And actually, we're going to go adjust those crashes really quickly. Cool. Okay, so here's the other thing we're going to do. Talking about hitting things at the exact same time. Obviously those hats aren't exactly on, which is great, right? Any time that crash cymbal is hitting at the same time as either a kick or a snare, I'm going to move it slightly off the grid. And I think our drummer tonight, my tendency is to rush the beat with my brass. Whatever my main driving, riding, a cymbal, hi-hat, whatever you call it, power hand, I guess, right? I have a tendency to be a little bit ahead. So anytime that I'm on a kick or a snare, I'm just going to straddle it so that way I'm just going to pump it ahead a little bit so that way we're not having two hits at exactly the same time coming out of the computer, okay? So this one, don't have a kick or a snare. So I'm going to leave it on the grid. That's fine. Right? This one, I've got a snare there. This one, I've got a kick. So I'm just going to move it. And just the fact that I'm not moving it by the same amount is giving me a little bit of just random chaotic nature to this. That's just going to, again, a lot of this stuff's subconscious. A lot of this stuff's not really super audible, but these little micro moves can absolutely make a difference in the grand scheme of things. When we're talking about samples, building up on top of samples, just the way that these drum programs work, and they're basically triggering a lot of different audio at the same time, okay? Yeah, I heard a snare in there that's a little quiet. I hear that every time. Where is it? That one. So let's fix that one. Turn that one up a little bit. Boom. Heard something in there velocity wise. That snare, I can see it. I'm going to put, I want to hear gatu, gatu, gatu. So I'm going to just put this little gatu. Oops. Thank you. And that wouldn't be the same, right? So, and we're going to move that. We're going to let that hang, and then we'll do a crash cymbal. We'll do a double crash on the kick. Remember what I said? I never like everything hitting all at the same time. So we're just going to straddle these a little bit. Just a way to end, I guess. Okay. So now that we've got that part, I don't think we need to go in and do any fills. Like you guys kind of get the point of kind of how I'm building this out, right? Let's go in and start digging into sound. So the next thing I do this a lot because I find with MIDI, it's a very fine line between like your notes disappearing if something gets bumped a little bit or moved or whatever. So I like to consolidate. MIDI tracks often. Sorry, somebody's asking me a question really quickly that might be pertinent. Are you listening to all kit pieces at the same time, or do you listen to each individually? Maybe clarify that question a little bit for me. Like we're obviously listening to all the kit pieces right now, but what do you mean by that when I'm doing what specifically? Just clarify that a little bit for me. All right. Okay, so now let's start digging into some sounds here, okay? So I've got, obviously this is kind of like a very natural kind of sound, right? Great sound. Sounds awesome. If I was in a studio and somebody got those drum sounds, I'd be like, great drum sounds. But I want bigger. I want more. Like I want them to be a little bit more hyped. So there's a few different things that we can do. First thing we can do is we can go and start changing drum kits here. The reason we're not going to do that is we just made a bunch of decisions, velocity decisions, based off of this kit. Okay? So if we change this kit out, we may need to go start looking at velocities again. That little groovy thing in the beginning, or the first verse, all those ghost notes, all that stuff, we might need to go and completely like readjust all those velocities. So what I would rather do, this is where all these different tracks come in. What I would rather do is leave this as my quote unquote real drummer, right? And then start supplementing. So the next plugin I have in line here is Drum Savior. Great sounds in this. So a few people have already asked me when they saw, people who know kind of what my process is, they're like, I thought you used Superior Drummer on everything. I use like everything, anything and everything. But Superior Drummer is my main, quote unquote, my main like kit, my fake drummer, right? Savior, I love for the sound. They've got amazing kick drums and snare drums and toms. Even the cymbals are really great in here. But I miss a little bit of just like the way that all the leakage and the bleed and everything in Superior Drummer, the way that they have that all kind of set up is just, for whatever reason, gels with me more, because I think ultimately, like when I track drums, it kind of mimics that what I already do when I'm tracking drums. So what I like Savior for is, Drumforge has a couple of other libraries that are kind of built out like with this sampler style. Obviously like the OG Drumforge, right? But what I like this for is supplementing my quote unquote kind of fake drummer with the sounds of this. This stuff sounds just a little bit more mixed out of the gate. So I'm going to start just blending stuff in and see kind of what works. Okay. So I'm just going to play this. I'm going to loop this. Okay. So that's Savior. Somebody asked earlier, what do I do about phase, right? What do you do if something's out of phase? Well, you got to go in and start adjusting that. And so ultimately, you got to figure out like, okay, well, where can I adjust that? Okay. So in Superior Drummer, they've got, if you go to the mixer, you can start flipping phase on everything. Now, the thing is, if I flip the phase on the kick here, it's probably going to be out of phase with the overheads here. So I probably don't want to do it there. So this might be a scenario where if the kick in Drumforge needs to be flipped, I can always just check it really quickly. it's good, right? So I'm good there. So oops. Go back to there, please. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just gonna, as I'm playing through, I'm gonna pick a different sound in DrumForge. Ooh, I like that. That's cool too. That's awesome. Okay, hang on. Don't mean to be jumping around here, but there's something in here that's bugging me. There's something off with the timing in here. Let me just address this really quickly here. Yeah, I'm just going to shift this back just a hair. Okay, and then the other thing I'm going to do is there. I'm going to put this down on here and this on here. There we go. Okay, so just adding in that DrumForge just automatically makes it sound like, okay, this is sounding a little bit more like a record, right? Okay, so again, we're talking about Superior Drummer here is kind of like our fake real sound, right? It's not fake, it's just programmed, it's samples. I'll call that kind of like organic and kind of neutral, right? Okay. Then we've got our kick and snare from DrumForge, which is adding a lot of tone, a lot of character, adding some hype to this, right? It's making it sound more mixed. That's DrumForge solo. And I've got, actually, I can hear the cymbals in there. I thought I was just using it for the kick and the snare. Ooh, that sounded cool. Well, let's leave it in there. Happy accident. Okay, I'm going to mute the toms on DrumForge because I think we're gonna grab the toms from another track. Okay, I'm just gonna mute all the cymbals in DrumForge. Okay, I'm hearing a weird phasing thing going on there. Do I have a double note in there? Something's gone on. You can hear it like, pew, pew. Yep, double note. See? Okay. And that's what happens when you have double notes. You get that little weird kind of phasey kind of thing. Okay, so let's change all the durations again so we can see what's going on here. That's a flam. We're fine on there. Okay, cool. Just wanted to figure that out. Okay, so then I got another option here, like a secondary hype option, which is our, I think this is our modern and massive kit. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can flip the phase. I can't remember if I can do that in Contact. Let me have a look. I do want to flip the phase of that kick. Yeah, there we go. No, works better there. Drum Forge. Okay, so then the other thing I can do, and I do this a lot when I'm programming, is right now we've just been listening to like Superior the whole time, and now I'm mixing in new sounds. One of the things I like to do while while I'm programming is I like to trigger some one-shots. So I have Battery loaded up with just kicks, and I've got just a library of a couple of my one-shots that I like, and then I've got a snare track with just a couple of snares loaded up that I like, and then those, even while I'm playing, right? So I've got those. I can trigger those live. So as I'm programming, I can be hearing those, which makes it just a little bit more exciting, right? And Battery with the one-shots runs fine. There's no weird flamming or anything going on. Some of the programs will have a little bit of like a weird latency if you're running them live like that, but just I think that's probably more a Pro Tools bug than it is anything else. But so I'll just run Battery for a kick and a snare, pretty much, and I can swap them out for whatever I need. So now we'll listen to that a little bit here. And remember, all of this is being triggered off of one instrument track. So I've only got one MIDI track, but I'm triggering all of these different things through the MIDI out here. And if you hold Control and click on this, you can add more outputs. Right now I'm maxed out. I'm not maxed out, but everything in this session is basically has this MIDI routed to it. And that way you don't have to duplicate MIDI all the time, right? All right, so here we go. Let's just start mixing and matching sounds here a little bit, okay? Drum shots. Okay, I'm gonna throw some toms on here as well. What do I have on toms? What did I select on toms? I think I put a addictive drummer up for toms. Let's hear. Where are my toms? There we go. Oh, something didn't trigger there. Oh, there we go. We've got rim shots. So right now, these aren't being mapped to my Battery sampler. So let's fix that. Okay, so right now, here's a little inside baseball for you. Okay, so there are a couple snares triggered, but they didn't actually play anything. So on Battery, or pretty much a lot of these sampler programs, you can select which key triggers the samples. Well, I want not only D1, but E1 is also like a rim shot. Obviously, I don't have a rim shot sample here, but I at least want this snare to trigger if the rim shot on Superior Drummer triggers. So I just typed in D1 to E1, gives me a snare sample triggering at that point, right? Oh, missed it again. There we go. Why isn't that triggering? Oh, it is. It's just quiet. So, okay. Now let's add in some drum soap, get some ambience going. So I've got that routed down to trigger. Down here. Unmute these so we can hear them all. Right? So, all right. Okay, the other thing I like to do is I like to trigger crash samples as well. So I've got a version of Easy Drummer with just the crashes on it, okay? So I have all the drums muted out except for the crashes. So now when you hear this, right? Okay, so I'm going to solo Superior Drummer. You can hear what that sounded like when we were programming. Then I'll bring everything in. Yes, mixing on control surface. Somebody asked in the chat, are you mixing on a control surface? I'm like, yeah, I am. So we've got our part. We've gone through. We've got a lot of different sonic options now. I think now is going to be a good time to... Okay, now what do we do with this? Like, okay, we've got this. Some people, depending on what you're doing, if you're just doing a demo and you're like, cool, I like the sound of this, you can just print this all as your drum mix and like you don't have any options, fine, you're good to go. But I want to show you guys how you can like multiple out this thing into something that if you were handing off to a mixer or if you were going to mix, something that would be a lot more manageable and kind of gives you all of these options in kind of an audio format instead, which I prefer as a mixer. I would prefer to be using audio tracks where all of the stuff has been bussed out. So we're going to start with Superior Drummer because this is kind of like the big one, right? So I'm just going to go through and mute everything again. We're going to mute the track. We're just going to hear the live drums, okay? Okay. And if you see here, I've got notes saying from eDrums 1, eDrums being our kind of our main kit, right? So I'm just going to go grab all of those and put them together for a second. Right now, I've got it all kind of grouped like with my kicks and my snares and all that stuff, right? So I'm just going to go grab all the stuff. You can't see this, but bear with me. eDrums 1, eDrums 1. Okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to just put all of this next to each other, and we're going to turn it on. I've got a kick, snare, toms, cymbals, and room, okay? And so in Superior Drummer, and a lot of the other programs as well, each one does it a little bit differently. You can go in and you can basically like bust this stuff out to separate tracks. So for instance, instead of it all coming out two outputs here, you can have everything going to its own output, so you can basically print it in kind of audio, but have it all separate. The other thing I didn't show you guys is the bleed function. So like I said, while I'm programming my drums, I usually keep the bleed off, and then as I'm about to print it, I'll go through and adjust all of the bleed accordingly. So for instance, let's solo the snare drum within Superior Drummer here. So you hear a little bit of the kick drum in there. Hopefully you guys can hear that. So this track, the bottom mic, if you click on the bottom mic, you can see that all of these elements here are bleeding into that mic. So let's just solo just the bottom mic here. Now, if I turn off the bleed, right, you're not going to hear that anymore. And somebody would say, why do you want the bleed? Aren't you trying to get rid of the bleed when you're recording live drums? Yes, like a lot of the time we're trying to isolate it, or we'll gate it, or we'll do all these things. And we can do that, but like I said, this kit serves a purpose for me. This kit is trying to, like I said, kind of reproduce what the live drum tracking session would be. And so I want these tracks to represent that. The other supplement kits that I was using, the Drum Forge, the GGD kit, the Addictive Toms, the Easy Drummer samples, all that, or cymbals, all that stuff doesn't need to necessarily be real. That can just be like super sampley supplemented. I'm fine with that. So, but this I want full, like I want this, like I said, to replicate a live drum tracking session. So I'm going to select all of these tracks and I'm going to turn on all of the bleed, enable all bleed from all instruments. And now you're going to see up here, this is going to be loading a massive sample library, because now instead of when that overhead or that cymbal hits, it's not just playing the sample when the cymbal hits. It's also playing a sample when the snare hits, the bleed coming through, right? So now, if I clear my solo and we listen to like, let's listen to the toms. Here's a perfect example. Now we're going to listen to the toms, listen to all the bleed. Right? Here's the magic with these programs. If you want the bleed, because you want it to be quote unquote real, like you want it to be as realistic as possible, leave the bleed on, but you can turn it down a little bit. So we're just kind of like optimizing, like, again, like we do all these crazy things in the studio where we put a blanket over the kick drum. We put a little guard, like a shield over the snare drum mic. The toms, you might kind of position in a way that they're rejecting the cymbals. Like, so we have control over that after the fact, which is really cool. But if you want to, like fake the real drummer, you would leave a lot of that stuff on, but you can turn it down. So that's a lot of the time what I'll do is I'll just go through, and as I'm bussing this out, I will select kind of, I'll independently select how much bleed I want for those mics. So really quickly, we're going to bust this out. And how Superior Drummer works is you bust it out in, you basically bust it out in stereo pairs. So we're going to put all the kicks out 1 and 2. Well, actually, I use 3 and 4 because 1 and 2 is the main track. So we'll put all the kicks out 3 and 4. We'll put all the snares out 5 and 6. Tom 1 and is going to be going to 7 and 8. That doesn't necessarily need to be stereo. Like, you can make these mono if you want. I think I just set the template up for a 4 stereo track, so it was nice and easy for you. And then what we can do is we can put all the cymbals together. If you want to break off the hi-hat, like, that's up to you. Everybody wants to do something a little bit differently. In this scenario, well, just to make it easy, I'll put everything together. So all the cymbals are going to go out 15, 16. Okay. And then we'll do, we'll put all the rooms out together for now. Again, I probably would break these rooms off to their own thing, but for now, let's do that. Okay. Now I'll close that down. Now we'll go assign our inputs on these audio tracks. You can select plugins. So we're going to go find Superior Drummer. I'm holding down the weird claw modifier key that will sequentially set my inputs starting at 3/4. And we should end up at 17/18. And now if I go on input on these tracks and I hit play, I'm going to go on my control surface here. Right? And I got my toms. There's my cymbals, my overheads. Got my rooms. Keep an eye out for your levels. So what you can do is you can just go into Superior, trim down your levels. So it looked like our cymbals were peaking a little bit there. So I'll just grab all of the cymbals together, bring them down. You can also set these up in buses. Looks like the snare's a tad hot as well. And it looks like you can actually control the outputs here. So Tom 4 is a little loud. Let's bring that down. Tom 4 is 13, 14. Let's just bring these down. I'm always pretty conservative with levels. I don't need things to be super hot, especially now with like the technology we're using. You don't have to like have everything almost peaking like you used to. Okay, so now that's Superior Drummer. We got that. Oh, let me show you one other thing in Superior Drummer. Okay, room mics. For anybody who's recorded a live drum kit, I love room mics. This is one of the reasons we made Drum Soap. I love room mics, but they're so hard to control because typically there's just so much cymbal wash in room mics that it then kind of it doesn't really give you what you're wanting. You want the big boom ka from the snare and the kick. Let me show you a little trick you can do here in Superior Drummer. So if I solo the room mics real quick. So like all the room mics have a lot of cymbal in them. What you can do, again, this is the amazing thing about these programs, is you can go in and just individually adjust the cymbals that are bleeding into the room mic. So here, I'm going to select the hat. I've got all my room mics selected here. I'm going to select my hat. Actually, I'll reverse engineer this. I'll select all of these cymbals with the ride and the hat. Okay, so now all these are selected. And now I'm going to start just playing with the level. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I got a comment saying, yeah, just record a one shot from what you want and then trigger it with the rest of the room mics. Okay, so that sometimes works. One shot room mics, non-dynamic room mics can be okay, but sometimes, as you know, people who have played around with Drum Soap very quickly realize that sometimes just one shot drum samples, especially of the same drum, doesn't give you always the same result. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, that is kind of like an intermediate solution. Having the ability within this program to do, or some of the others, to do this, what we're doing right now, and to control how much bleed's going in the room, to me is next level over recording just a one shot drum room personally. But you know, again, whatever works for you. I've done lots of that. I've got lots of ambient one shots that I use all the time. That was kind of the genesis of Drum Soap was basically recording individual kick and snare and tom room samples that I would just trigger alongside of the kit. So yeah, totally good. Thanks for chiming in. That's 100%. So now we can control how much cymbals are coming through the rooms. That's a lot, to me, that's a lot more usable. So we're going to print it like that, okay? Okay, so now we've got our Superior kit being printed. Now let's go to our next kit. So we've got our kick and our snare from our. We can take this plugin off. You can do one of two things with. You can do one of two things when you're doing these like kick and snares. Sometimes I'll actually print them together. If it's a sound where it's just adding, I'm not like really leaning on it super heavily, but I'm mixing it in. Sometimes I'll just print these together on one track. Other times I'll put them all separate, but same kind of idea. And we don't necessarily have to go through each and every one of these scenarios, but basically you can go through and select what you want your output to be. So you can. Oh, we got a little bit of a freeze here. Sorry. You can select what output you want. So you can go through and print your kicks, print your snares, print your overheads, and break them out the way that you want. So really quickly, I think you guys get the point on this. I'm just going to do this on the Superior so you guys can kind of see what this looks like, right? Get that ready to go. You know what? Maybe what I'll do is I'll do my one shots, the kick samples, and maybe the soap. Oh, you know what? I'm going to show you soap because soap I bust together. All right, so let's turn these tracks on. I'm going to get rid of my picture-in-picture here, guys. You don't need to see me. Okay. So I'm going to turn on my kick sample, my snare sample, and my what I call room soap. Okay. And so I'm just going to go straight bus in on these. So again, doing that crazy claw modifier. So it goes 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46. I'm going to go over here to my kicks, E kick and E snare. Let's send those out. 41 and 42, 43, 44. And then all of my soap stuff, I'm going to bust together and print that onto a room mic. So again, I'm simulating like if I had the perfect scenario of the room, what would that look like? Okay. And so I'm going to just go into input on soap, and I'm just going to, while listening to the Superior, I'm going to just quickly do a mix of the drum soap samples onto one stereo track. Okay, let me just check the toms. Okay, perfect. And then let's go with our battery kit. Okay, so now I'm going to print this really quickly. I'm going to go into record on all these tracks down here. I'm going to print this and just show you. So again, for timing's sake, I'm not going to route all of these different samplers to these tracks. But what I like to do is I'd get a preset. With, let me go back to so you guys can see me. I'll do a preset of a kit that I like where it's all being sent out to 1 and 2. So that way I can program with it. And then I'll have a preset of the same kit all bust out already. And some programs allow you to just save the output settings. So you can once you get a kit, you can then apply that output setting to that kit. So there's a few different options depending on what you're using. But let's record this really quickly so you guys can kind of just see how this ends up on a track. All right, so I'm going to go into record. Oops, not recording on the soap. Let's go into record there. There we go. The one that I didn't record that I'm actually going to as just an extra option really quickly is I'm going to record the cymbal samples as well, because I think you will, once we're kind of like digging into like, okay, what does this look like when you go to mix? I think it will make a lot of sense. So let's just record the cymbal samples as well. And once you have this set up, I usually just do it in one pass. So I don't like, this is, it's not like for every time you need to record a different track, you have to do this over and over again. You do it once, pretty much once everything's done and everything's routed. You just do one pass and it's there. So, all right, so let's record the simple samples. Don't need to record everything else again, just that. And let's make sure simple samples are open. There we go. We're going to be getting some flamming. Ignore that. Okay. All right. So remember how I told you some programs, when you bounce them out, they kind of like have a little bit of a weird timing, or they have a different latency or delay compensation or whatever. That's what we're hearing right now. So you do have to go and sometimes adjust that. Okay. And typically what I've found is, if in Pro Tools, this is more of like a bus out, bus in thing. And I don't understand what the problem with that is. I don't understand if it has something to do with the fact that I'm triggering drums from an instrument track to this, and then that's going through an auxiliary. It probably has something to do with the fact that it's going through an auxiliary and it's just not making up for that. But you could also alleviate that by just going straight out of battery. But I just do one of these things. You just line it up, because I'm typically going to go in and adjust this anyways. So I'll just go and line it up so that way it's starting at the same spot. Same with the battery snare. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing with our cymbal. Find our cymbal there, and boom. Okay, so now if I turn off all of our drum programming stuff now, okay? So I'm just going to make this all inactive. And all we're going to be playing with now is the audio tracks. And if you're sending this out to be mixed, if you are just mixing it yourself, here's what we're dealing with. Okay, and I'm just going to rearrange the tracks here a little bit so they're in an order that I like. And now you've got all of these options to mix as if you tracked this with a real drummer and then added some samples to it, right? So here, let me just get a quick balance for you guys. Toms. So that's the room from Superior. Then here's our soap. And now you have complete control over the drums. You've got your quote unquote kit, like as if you recorded the drums. You've got your samples. You've got some control over when you're mixing elements of having these samples. You don't have to go cut triggers. You've already got all of this stuff. And so this kind of, from just doing this section, is a very kind of brief, 3 hour long. That's an overview of how I would program drums and then print them to be sent off. Obviously, like I said, I would probably add in an extra drum kit I probably added an extra drum, like a hype drum kit. Maybe I would have a separate drum kit for just the rooms if I wasn't using soap, like if soap was too big or if I just wanted a different flavor. But basically, that's kind of the process. So I'm going to open this up for Q&A a little bit. I'm actually going to go to the chat really quickly. There was a couple questions coming through. Somebody asked earlier about what kits I like or cymbal samples I like. Let me open something up here really quickly. Just kind of give you an idea of kind of where my ear goes. So I'm going to completely disregard everything we've done. And I'm just going to switch this. So let's go to, I'm trying to think of one. Let's go to this one here. Okay. Okay. All right, so I just picked a random kit. This is the darkness kit. This is a kit, a good example of one that I really like the sound of the drums. I really like the sound of the rooms. I don't love the sound of the cymbals. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just a little like dark for my tastes and a little like kind of low MIDI. I prefer a little more like scooped, a little bit brighter cymbals, right? So this would be a situation where I would turn this off. Okay, I would just go through and remove all of the cymbals. Okay. Or you know what? Let me rephrase this. If this was my main programming kit, what I would do is I would leave the cymbals on. Actually, here, let me back up for a second. I'd leave the cymbals on. Let's select all the tracks. I would enable all of the bleed, like I showed you guys earlier. But then I wouldn't actually print the hat, the ride, the splash, the overheads from this. I would mute those out. So the only cymbals that you would be hearing is coming through the room mics. And like I said, I would go in and get rid of the, I'd get rid of a lot of the cymbal bleed in the room mics. So I'd go there, splash all the way up to ride, and then add the hat. I wish they would put the hat down by the ride, but I get why they don't. Okay, and then here's what I would do. I would make another auxiliary track. I'd put another instance of Superior Drummer. And then I would go find, so Progressive Foundry's got really good cymbals. That's one that I use a lot for cymbals, okay? So. All right. Load them up. I don't need that one. Okay. So now this one, I would go turn off all the other stuff. Okay. So I'm going to go turn off all of the shells and all of the rooms. Okay. I'm going to turn all that stuff off, but I'm going to enable for all of the cymbal mics, I'm going to enable all of the bleed. So that way you're going to be hearing kicks and snares coming through it, right? Now remember, we have to hit Control and add this Superior Drummer. So now when you go in there, we've got aux 1, which is, we'll call this E drums sim for cymbals. And now we're going to be triggering cymbals here. Let me me get rid of one thing. Let me turn these room mics down a little bit here. Okay, so now we're going to hear, I'll show you really quickly. We're going to be hearing the shells and rooms from this kit, which I think is like the darkness kit, right? And then we're going to be hearing the cymbals and the hi-hat and the ride and everything through from the Progressive Foundry. But we're hearing the leakage too. So I'm just moving up and down the cymbal so you guys can hear that. And now when we break this all out to our multi-tracks, it's going to all look the same. The only difference is the cymbals are going to be from one kit and the rooms and the shells are going to be from another kit, but they're still going to have leakage. And so you can take that one step further and you can go and pick, even though you're not using even though you're not using the snare from, let's say, the Progressive Foundry kit, you can go in and pick a snare that kind of sounds similar. Okay, so you can pick a snare that just kind of has a similar tone, so that way the leakage, that's not quite it yet still. That way the leakage kind of has a cohesiveness. Yeah, one of them's still a little off. But anyways, that's where you kind of get into the details of this stuff, so. Hope that answered your question. If it didn't, I'll try to take a shot at answering it again. All right, I'm going to go up into the chat a little bit, and then we're going to give away Savior and wrap it up for the night. So if you got questions, here's your time to ask. If you guys, just a little bit of housekeeping, if you guys aren't subscribed to my newsletter, please click the link in the description and do so. We get giving away a lot of stuff, and it's only going to get better. We're just kind of starting this whole process and starting to build the community and build the content. And so I appreciate you guys kind of getting involved early and kind of encouraging me to keep doing it and do more. So go sign up for that. Definitely, obviously, we're giving away some Drum Forge stuff tonight. I love the Drum Forge stuff. I love this. I love Tune Track. Like I said, we're brand agnostic here, but definitely like demo some of this stuff and find the tools that you guys like. Like, it's all really good. If you like what I use, great, get it. If you like something else, fine. Just make sure you find a tool that works for you. And if you do need, to check some stuff out, there's a lot of demos. There's a lot of cool videos and samples and stuff like that that you can check out. So, okay, back to the chat. What control surface am I using? I'm using an Avid S3. I've got an S3, a dock, an iPad, and a rock solid audio controller. Well, I guess I also have a Stream Deck, so I got a lot of controllers. But yeah, I do like the S3. I love the rock solid audio. I haven't been using that. I use that to control like SSL channel strips. So, sorry, I think I missed a couple questions. You hear a low velocity snare hit. Are you just listening for snare, or do you just hear it? Oh, I just as I'm listening down to the track, if anything kind of jumps out where I'm like, oh, that something sounds weird there, then I'll just deal with it. So I highly recommend, like, if you're just getting started, yeah, listen down, just paying attention to the snare. then listen down, just paying attention to the kick. Then listen down, just paying attention to the cymbals. Like, definitely do that. I think that's beneficial to kind of compartmentalize that. And I do that a little bit, but even still, there's always those things that just kind of pop up like along the way that you're like, oh, there's something weird there. Okay, I'm gonna go grab that. No problem. So thanks for that question. Hey, Paul DeCarly, how's it going, buddy? Yes, the click always bugs me. Oh, man. I have that physical snare 11 on my arsenal. Oh, that's nice. That's cool. Yeah, that's a great sounding one. Yes, man, snare drums. Snare drums, I feel like snare drums, even for like audio engineers, like I know a lot of record producers and engineers that have snare collections and they don't even play play drums. Snares, like a snare can be like a fingerprint on a song, right? It can kind of be the identity of the song in a way. I feel like snare drums are a little bit like guitar amps for a lot of us production guys. So yeah, it's cool having a nice selection. What other questions we have here? Controlling bleed like that, so cool. I've used EQ for actual drums. This is so much easier. Yeah, yep, totally. Totally, it gives you a lot of flexibility doing it this way. It's pretty cool. Oh, the Savior drums. Savior drums are awesome. Like I said, I use Superior Drummer a lot for like I want to get that authentic, real, like just I want to mimic a tracking session. That's not to say Superior Drummer doesn't have great sounds. They do. There's some really great sounds. But for me, again, I like to compartmentalize my tools to a certain extent. So if I'm looking for more hype from Superior Drummer, I typically don't go and tweak it in that first instance. I'll add a second instance, and then that will be my hype. But I love the sounds in Savior, Drumforge Savior. I love the sounds in. Like I said, the GGD has some really great stuff. And then there's also a lot of just like sample libraries out there that are really good as well. So it kind of depends on what your flavor is. Yeah, for sure. If TuneTrack contacts you to make them a drum library, would you do it? And which drummer would you pick for the job? Just a random question. You know what? I 100% if TuneTrack wanted to do it, and I know the guys over there, they're awesome. I would absolutely do like a full on like authentic multi-bus routing, multi-microphone thing, the way that kind of we showed you. I would absolutely do one with them for sure. I mean, man, if I could get, I don't know if he'd do it, but if we're just, if we're shooting for the moon here, like I said earlier in the live stream, like Tommy Lee, the way he hits the drums, the sound of the drum that when he hits it is just so I don't even say unique. It's not really unique's not the right word for it, but there's been very few scenarios where it's like we get a good sounding, let's say with a drum tech, or I'm in there banging on the drum, or the assistant's banging on the drum. We get a good sound, and then Tommy goes in there and hits the drum, and it's just like, oh God, like we thought we had that was like a 9.5, and now somehow it's an 11. So yeah. And not more importantly than that, but like also equally important is I think the cool thing that I would really be very intentional and very precious with is like where I recorded it. So I've got a couple ideas, whether it's with TuneTrack or Drumforge or on my own, whatever. I've got a few sample library ideas that I think would be cool spots, and I've got a couple people in mind as well. So yeah, good question. Put it out in the universe. I like it. What control surface? Yes, I do recommend that. The Avid S1s are really good if you're on Pro Tools. Let them cook. I'm a sucker for Death SDX part. Yeah, me too. I would say that's actually probably one of the most like balanced, realistic, tons of option kits. This is a great kit. Let me pull it up here. This one here is awesome. I probably have a default already saved in this one. Yeah, I do. And it's already set to multi out. So yeah, I use this one a lot. Let me go to the one that I like. Oh. Money. Money, money, money. I think that's like the exact kick drum we had at the chop shop. It was like maybe it wasn't a 1980s Gretsch. I think it was earlier than that, but it was a 2414. It was yellow rim, black. Like that might be the one. So no wonder I love it. Back to the chat. Yeah, Death's good. That's a great SDX library there for sure. In the Nickelback Nail the Mix, you mentioned most of the drum samples were created during the production that you mixed in with real drums. Is this the process you use to craft those tones? Yeah. So this is actually a great question because I didn't even think to really include this. So in the scenario where before we started breaking everything out and we were printing, right? So I think I can really quickly replicate this. Okay, forget about all this stuff that we just recorded there, okay? I'm so glad you asked this question. I would have been bummed if I forgot to mention this. Okay, so let's pretend. Okay, let's get rid of this kit too. Let's turn on, I'm going to turn on my my kick and my snare sample, and I'm going to hide all this other stuff, okay? We don't need this for now. Okay, so if I was programming drums, if I was producing a song, right? Okay, so in this scenario, I've got my Superior Drummer kit. That's kind of like my fake live kit, right? Right? And then typically, I would have that running battery. I would have that either running battery or trigger or something to where I could just trigger some of my one-shots. Okay, so let's say we built the whole song. This is typically how I do it with pretty much with anybody that I'm working with. Let's say we built the song or we wrote the song with this drum kit in Superior. You know what? I'm going to throw on Savior really quickly because it's another good example of just including another hype because I actually kind of want a little bit of the poke from that. So right now, like when I listen to this kit, I'm missing a little bit of like mid-range articulation that I think I would really like, and that's one of the things. Like the kind of like the openness and the articulation of the Savior is really awesome. So I'm gonna make sure that I'm routed to that. I'm gonna go turn off. I've got all the kicks and the toms and everything, or sorry, all the cymbals and the toms. I just want. Where is that? There we go. Okay, so now let's say that's the sound, and I built the track, and we were doing rough mixes, and we were writing the song, and we were getting it to a point where like, man, this is sounding awesome, and now we want to go and track real drums, right? What we're listening to sounds really good. We talked earlier about like the benefit of a live drummer. Like there is, in my opinion, still a very big benefit to that. And I like to do it when I have the option to do it. But I also love like the drum sounds that we are currently listening to. I've probably crafted over the course of building the production. So then this is exactly what I would do. I just go to the end of the song and I would just draw in a MIDI note on the kick. Okay. And I would do probably 3 of them in incremental velocities. Okay, and I'll just listen to them and make sure they sound good. So I can go a little, maybe don't have to be as drastic with this. Okay, I gotta let them Got to give them a little more space so I'm not getting any bleed over top, right? I think I need to go even more. So let's spread that out even more. So I'll just cut it like this. Okay. All right. Okay. And then I'll just copy that over here. I'm going to do the same thing with the snare. So I'll just take all those. Okay. So now what you're hearing is a blend of this kit, right? This kit, that, and this. Now let's take this one step further, because this is typically what happens. Let's say over the course of the production, I start EQing stuff, right? So let's go back here. Maybe start compressing it a little bit. Maybe I have a reverb. Let's get a reverb set up for the snare. Really esoteric, high-priced deverb. Non-lin, large. Okay. Just doing a really quick thing here, guys. So bear with me, please. Okay, so we'll send that. I think Pro Tools is having a little bit of a delay compensation spaz. If I restarted my rig right now, it would get rid of that flam. We got a flam on the snares. Okay, so just to pretend like that isn't existing. So basically, what I would do is I would just generate some MIDI down here, and I would just print this. So I'm just going to do a bounce the disk, okay? I'll call this my drum programming template samples. All this stuff. Import after bounce. Yep. Offline. Sure. Cool. Okay. So I'll put these right here for now. I'll turn off the MIDI. Now, these, for this song, after I go record live drums, these are now the samples that get triggered on top of the live drums for this song. Now, if I use all these exact same tracks for a different song, and because it's a different song, I blended the drums differently. Or maybe I went into here and I selected a different snare. When we go to record live drums, I'm going to do this again because the blend might be different. The snare drums might be different. The EQ might be different. And then when we go to track live drums, I've got these to trigger using trigger or whatever else that I happen to be using. And so now I've got the tone, I've got the sounds that we've been hearing throughout the production, that we've been crafting day after day after day. When we go to do live drums, we don't just throw those away. We supplement the live drums. We take the benefit of the live drums and we then combine it with the benefit of the samples to get, hopefully, what is an awesome drum sound. So I'm glad you asked that question. I would have gone to bed tonight being like, shit, I didn't show them that, because people ask that a lot. And people kind of also say like, well, what's the drum? What's the combination of samples in that song? And I'm like, I don't know. They're like, what's that drum sample? And I'm like, well, it's not the same every time. So when people want like my Nickelback snare sample, it's not the same every time. There's a different one for every song. Do they have commonalities? Absolutely. Is the blend different? Most likely. Is one have reverb? Does one not? Is one have EQ? Does one not? What's the blend? Did I swap out a snare in Superior Drummer because the song needed a thuddier snare or a ringier snare? Is the kick have less low end? Does it have? Did I use Arcus? Well, obviously, when we were doing the Nickelback album, we didn't have Arcus, but now I do. Did I shorten down the decay and the sustain on Arcus to cut off, some of the tail of the kick drum? There's all of those elements, right? And so every song gets its own set of samples. And the reason I do 3, obviously, so you guys can see, is just so I have velocities. So that way I can load them in and have different velocities being triggered. So I can make like a trigger instrument with that. So so glad you asked that question. Man, I would have forgotten that for sure. So you are all very, very welcome. Thank you for you guys for coming. This has been amazing. I'm going to give away a savior right now. So John, throw somebody down in the chat. I'm going to give that away while I'm answering these questions, and that way everybody can go to bed or get up in the morning, whatever you happen to be. So David, oh, you already did. Thank you, John. You're 10 steps ahead of me. Awesome. Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys coming. This has been great. Hopefully, I know sometimes I get a little like long-winded and convoluted. I'm working on it. I just want to make sure that you guys get kind of what I'm trying to convey. And you guys, I don't skip over the details, because I think sometimes, when this is something that I've been doing for years, it's very easy for me to kind of skip over the details. So the only way for me to not do that is to then get kind of like long-winded and over-explain things. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me on that for sure. So yes, definitely go back and rewatch, man. I mean, there's a lot of info in here, and I definitely don't expect everybody to get it all in the same shot. So the other thing is, like I said, we've got a Discord community started. We're trying to get the activity up. I'm trying to be more active. I've had just a crazy busy last couple months, so I haven't been the most active in it. But that's where I think the community helps. Is you might have a question that 30 of the people in the Discord community already know the answer to, or maybe I've said it in one of my other videos and they can chime in. So I love the back and forth, and we're all helping each other out. So definitely go over there and kind of get active in there if you like this kind of thing. So go back to the questions. I'm trying not to skip over these here. Information reassuring some workflow that is similar, if not the same. Yeah, you know what? Sometimes it's nice just to have see somebody else do things, and you're like, okay, cool. I don't need to do it a different way. The way I'm doing it is pretty good. And so when you see somebody that somebody's maybe making records that you like, or somebody that you've gotten good tips from before, when they are doing something that you're already doing, it's just kind of another like vote of confidence, gives you a little of that extra confirmation that you're on the right track. So I love that. Love that. Please get Stu Copeland to just do hi-hats. No kidding. Hi-hat loops from him would be awesome. It's the exact drum from the Black album. Oh yeah. The Death kit. Yeah, I've used that kit. So there's a rental shop, a drum tech in LA, Drum Doctor. So he owns that kit, and he's been offered a lot of money for somebody to sell it, and he won't. So yeah, it's a good kit. It's a good kit. I mean, it's not the magic, but it's pretty awesome. I mean, there's so many other things that made up that sound, but yeah, I get it. Chris, have you used anyone else's drum shots? All the time. There's one, it's probably the most Nickelback sounding snare I think I've ever come across. There's one, I can't remember whose pack it is, but it's called Snare Is All I Think About. And it's a great snare sample. It's the closest, if there's one snare sample that I'm like, I'm pretty sure I made that, even though I didn't make it. Like that might be the one. So I can't remember what library it is. I'll have to go and find it. But that's a really great one. Maybe somebody from Drumforge can chime in on that one. I use a lot of the drum shot stuff. I love it. Telltale sign of drummer is great when you sonically spot them from a mile away, regardless of the kit. Yeah, and you know what? For me, that's a lot of style. It's a lot of like kind of the parts they play and how they play it, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, for sure. When I was a kid, I mean, when I was like starting to play in bands, I just wanted all of my all of the drummers I played with, I just wanted them to play like Tommy Lee. And then so when I got when I got into this and I was like working with them, like, holy shit, this is like yeah, I was a huge fan of him right out of when I was a kid. I was massive Motley Crue fan, still am. But I can hear the reminiscence of the beef kick from Randy mixed a little in there. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, there's all of these different layers of stuff, and then they turn into different things. So the interesting thing is like, I might, like one of these samples that I made today, I might use the next time I'm programming, and then that might get mixed with another sample and one of the kicks or snares from Superior or Drum Savior, and then that will get printed when I go to mix that song or after the live drums. And now that's got a piece of that snare or kick in it. It's just an amalgamation. That's why when people ask me questions, they think I'm being like secretive and I don't want to give them the answer. It's not. It's like there's no answer. I don't know. They're like, which kick is that? I'm like, it's like 45 kicks that have just been bounced on top of other kicks and this and that. And it's like, so it's crazy. Okay, a couple more questions, then I got to wrap. This has been awesome. Ward, yeah, Appice? Yeah, yeah. Vinny, is it Appice? I've heard people pronounce that so many different ways. Live stream has started itself over about 5 times now. As good as YouTube is, I'm sure dumb as a big. Oh, God, that's funny. Going through here. Death kick plus Chris and Andrew drum shots make everything sound good. Well, there is probably death kick in a lot of my samples. So yeah, that's probably in a ton of them, just the way that it gets built. Have you tried Shaper Box 3 by Cable Guys? No, I haven't. I'll have to check that out. Who won? David won. Okay. Guys, this has been awesome. Excited to rewatch this. Your Nail the Mix. Thank you, guys. Okay. Holy moly. Like that one drummer, Will Ferrell. That's hilarious. Okay, guys. This has been amazing. I'm going to show this one more time. Obviously, the contest is over. I want to huge thank you to Drumforge. Those guys are incredible. If you haven't checked out their stuff, please do so. I love those guys. They make amazing products. I feel honored to be able to collaborate with them on a few things. So definitely check them out. And thank you guys all for sticking with me. We've been on this for 3.5 hours. You guys are champions. So thank you. Enjoy your weekend. And I'm going to try to get next week. I think I'm out of town the week after that. Well, whatever. Keep an eye on the newsletter and Instagram. We'll send out posts for the next live stream. So, peace, everybody. Be safe, be happy, be healthy, and we will see you on the next one. Okay, guys. Thank you so much.